Imagine this. In the endless silence of the cosmos, something stirs. It does not shine like a star. It does not orbit like a planet. It drifts alone, ancient, mysterious, through the cold black ocean of space. And tonight, it has done something no one thought possible. Tonight, the universe may have whispered back. Welcome, my friend. Settle in. Let the day slip away. Breathe slowly, and let your thoughts soften. This is not the news of the ordinary world, not the chatter of daily life. This is a story carried by the stars, a story of shadows and light, a story to guide you gently into the stillness of night. You are safe here, listening, you are resting, and as you drift deeper into calm, we will journey together into the mystery of 3I, Atlas. What is it? Where did it come from? Why does it seem to act unlike anything we have ever seen? These are questions even scientists cannot yet answer, but perhaps that is what makes it so captivating. 3.1. ATLAS is the third interstellar object ever discovered by humanity, a visitor not born in our solar system, not bound to our sun, and not connected to any of the familiar planets we have known for millennia. It came from somewhere beyond, from a region so far away that even the most powerful telescopes cannot yet trace its origin. And now, it is here, drifting silently past our world, as if pausing only long enough to be noticed before it disappears again into the dark. The name itself is almost like a code. 3I, the third interstellar object. Atlas, the survey telescope in Hawaii that first saw it, a system designed to scan the skies for dangerous asteroids, to warn us if something threatening approached. Think about that for a moment. The very eyes that first glimpsed this stranger were eyes built to guard the Earth. It was as if fate ensured that we would not miss it, as if the universe wanted us to notice this visitor as it crept through our solar system. At first, astronomers thought it was ordinary, perhaps just another comet, a loose ball of rock and ice, tumbling along, shedding material as the warmth of the sun touched its surface. But soon, the data began to whisper otherwise. Its orbit was strange, not quite what a comet's path should be. Its brightness flickered oddly, as if it were twisting or breaking apart, yet never fully disintegrating. And then, the strangest detail of all began to surface. Faint signals, patterns recorded by observatories listening to the silent skies. Pulses of energy, soft but deliberate, repeating in a way that did not belong to random noise. 3.1 ATLAS, it seemed, was not silent after all. Imagine standing on a quiet shore at night, waves rolling endlessly in the dark. For hours, the sea is nothing but noise and motion, and then suddenly, you hear it, a rhythm, a knock, a beat, too regular to be chance. You look out across the black water and realize, something out there is knocking back. That is the feeling 3I Atlas has given to astronomers. Not proof, not certainty, but the sense that the void itself has spoken. As you breathe softly and sink deeper into this story, allow yourself to picture it, a fragment of something larger, maybe a shard cast adrift from a world we will never see, or perhaps, not a fragment at all, but something made, something sent, a vessel, a beacon, a machine crossing the gulfs of eternity until, by chance or by design, it brushes against our sun and lets its presence be known. The mind resists such possibilities, but the heart cannot help but wonder. It is not the first time we have faced such mystery. In 2017, the first interstellar visitor, named Oumuamua, swept through the solar system. It was thin, elongated, reflecting light in ways that made it almost impossible to categorize. Some called it a shard of rock, others imagined it as a flattened disk, perhaps even a sail drifting on radiation. The second visitor, in 2019, named Borisov, looked more like a traditional comet, shedding gases as it flew. But 3I ATLAS is different. It seems unstable, fragmenting, and yet refusing to vanish, whispering across the void with patterns that echo like the faintest heartbeat. Is it alive? No, not in the way we know life, but perhaps alive in the sense that it carries intention, that it carries meaning, that it has a story written into its strange path. The universe has had billions of years to shape mysteries we have only just begun to glimpse. And in the stillness of this moment, as you listen and breathe, you are part of that unfolding story. Astronomers hesitate. Of course, they weigh their words carefully, trying to explain what they see with equations, with probabilities, with careful restraint. But outside their careful language, the imagination runs free. What if this is not coincidence? What if the signals recorded are not just plasma storms or echoes of the sun's magnetic field? What if 3I Atlas has reached out, in the simplest of ways, to let us know it is here? Picture the scene. Deep in a control room, night pressing against the windows, a bank of instruments glowing softly in the dark. A researcher leans forward, eyes narrowing at the screen. There it is, a signal, faint but repeating, tap, 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 a pattern. Unlike the endless background noise of the universe, the room falls silent. Colleagues gather around. They replay the data, check the instruments, confirm again and again that this is not a mistake. And then, slowly, the realization begins to take root. Something is speaking. And it is coming from the direction of 3I ATLAS. Of course, the rational explanations follow. Interference from Earth. A quirk of the detectors, a natural phenomenon we simply do not yet understand. Perhaps, but still, the signal lingers, a riddle without an answer, and humanity, ever curious, ever restless, cannot help but lean closer to listen. As you drift deeper into calm, imagine that you are the one listening. Close your eyes and hear the faint beat, regular, deliberate, soft as a whisper. It does not shout, it does not demand. It simply waits, repeating, as if inviting you to lean closer. There is no urgency, no fear, only the quiet weight of mystery. You are no longer just a listener. You are part of the audience the universe has chosen. 3-1 Atlas has no voice, no words, but still, it speaks. And we, fragile, fleeting beings on a small blue planet, are listening, wondering, and waiting to understand. The silence of space is not empty. It is a canvas of faint signals, of whispers that stretch across unimaginable distances. Cosmic rays, background radiation, bursts from dying stars, all of them hum together in a symphony too vast for human ears. And yet, beneath that ancient noise, something about the rhythm from 3i Atlas feels deliberate. It has a pattern, a pause, a heartbeat. It is as though someone, somewhere, has tapped their finger on the void just to see if anyone is listening. We have always dreamed of this moment. For centuries, our species has looked up at the night sky and asked if we are alone. We have built radio dishes the size of football fields. We have sent signals into the stars. We have launched golden records into the dark, carrying music and maps and messages from Earth. But what if the universe has finally answered, not with words, not with images, but with the simplest of gestures? I am here. The possibility both thrills and unsettles us. Because if something beyond Earth is capable of reaching out, even in this subtle way, then we must face a truth that has always hovered at the edges of our imagination. Humanity is not the only intelligence watching the stars, and perhaps, we are not the first. As the data from 3i Atlas continued to pour in, astronomers began to notice something even more intriguing. The signal did not remain constant. Over days and weeks, its rhythm shifted slightly, as though responding to some unseen influence. It grew stronger when the object aligned with certain regions of the sky, weaker when it drifted elsewhere. Was this coincidence? Was it the result of solar winds, electromagnetic interference, or gravitational pull? Perhaps, but deep down, many began to wonder if it was a form of modulation, an attempt to communicate. If you allow your mind to wander, picture the journey this object has taken. Imagine it leaving its birthplace, a star perhaps tens or hundreds of light years away, hurled into interstellar space by some ancient collision, or by intention. It drifts for ages, untouched by any sun, unseen by any eye. And then, by the smallest of cosmic chances, it crosses our path. It dips into our solar system, weaving silently past the giants of Jupiter and Saturn, sliding closer and closer to the inner planets, until finally, it brushes near our neighborhood. And here, amid all the billions of stars and worlds it could have passed, it lets out a pulse, a wave, a whisper aimed precisely at the one planet known to be listening. Coincidence can be powerful, but sometimes it feels too neat to ignore. And so speculation began to bloom. Perhaps 3i Atlas is not a piece of debris, but a relic, a remnant of technology so old it predates our species. Perhaps it is a probe, launched by a civilization that vanished millions of years ago. Or perhaps it is something simpler and yet more profound, a message in a bottle, floating endlessly on the cosmic sea, waiting for someone, anyone, to pick it up. The human mind is good at stories, and the universe gives us endless material to weave them. Scientists, careful and cautious, continue to gather data. They speak of natural explanations, of complex interactions, of processes we do not yet fully understand. And they are right to do so because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But outside the walls of laboratories and observatories, the mystery is alive and breathing. People stare at the night sky with new eyes. They wonder if someone might be looking back. If you listen closely, perhaps you can feel it, that subtle shift in perspective. Our planet, once the entire stage for our stories, suddenly feels small. Our species, once the only actors we knew, now seem like one chorus among many. And 3i Atlas, drifting far beyond the clouds and the blue, becomes a mirror held up to our curiosity. It reflects not only our hunger for answers, but also our longing for connection. Now imagine, just for a moment, that the signal is intentional. What would it mean? What would it say about whoever, or whatever, sent it? It might not be a message directed specifically at us. It might be a beacon, pulsing blindly into the dark for eons, hoping to be heard. Or it could be a test, a way of measuring the silence, sending a signal and waiting to see if anyone replies. And if that is the case, then the next move is ours. The thought can be both beautiful and terrifying, because to respond would be to reveal ourselves. It would mean admitting that we are here, alive, thinking, and capable of listening. It would mean inviting conversation, and we cannot know who might answer. Perhaps the sender is gone. Perhaps they are near. Perhaps they are so far beyond us that our response would be as insignificant to them as the chirp of a bird is to us. And yet, the temptation remains. Who could resist saying hello into the dark, once they realized someone else might be out there? These are the kinds of questions that keep scientists awake at night, even as they assure the public that the signal is probably natural, because deep down, they know the truth. We simply do not know. And until we do, 31ATLAS remains one of the most tantalizing mysteries humanity has ever encountered, a question flung across the void, wrapped in ice and stone and silence. As you breathe deeply and let your thoughts drift, imagine that we are on the cusp of something profound. For thousands of years, humans believed the heavens were unchanging, that the stars were eternal and distant and silent. Then we learned that stars are born and die, that galaxies collide, that black holes sing gravity's deepest notes. And now, perhaps, we are learning that the cosmos is not silent after all, that it has been speaking all along. And we are only just now learning how to listen. And so the nights stretch on, filled with wonder and speculation. In observatories across the world, faint green traces on monitors flicker with data pouring in from distant telescopes, each number representing a photon that has traveled across vast space to whisper its truth. Some astronomers grow weary, sifting through endless charts, their eyes red from long hours of vigil. Yet even in their fatigue, they cannot help but feel a quiet awe. Because whatever 3i Atlas truly is, it has reminded humanity that the universe still holds secrets far greater than our imagination. In living rooms and bedrooms, people tune into late-night broadcasts or scroll through news updates. They whisper stories to each other, half in jest, half in wonder. Children point at the night sky, asking if the star they see could be where the visitor came from. Poets find themselves writing about signals and echoes, about lonely travelers and cosmic encounters. And in the stillness before sleep, millions close their eyes and dream of voices in the dark. You can almost hear it yourself, if you listen with your imagination, a rhythm carried across the silence, steady and patient. It does not rush, it does not demand. It simply waits, like a knock at a door, gentle but persistent. Knock, knock, knock. It is the sound of possibility, the sound of a question unspoken. And what a question it is. Could life have risen elsewhere, under the light of another sun? Could intelligence have bloomed on planets whose names we will never know? Could they, like us, have lifted their eyes skyward and asked if they were alone? Perhaps 3IATLAS is their answer, not to us specifically, but to the universe itself. A declaration: we existed, we searched, we reached out. The scale of it is humbling. If the signal is genuine, then it began its journey long before we built cities, before we spoke language, perhaps even before our kind first walked upright on the savannas of Africa. It may have traveled for thousands or millions of years, surviving the collapse of stars, the shifting of galaxies, the silent cold of endless night, only to brush against our solar system now, at the brief moment when we are able to hear it. It is as though the cosmos itself has conspired to let our paths cross. And yet, amid the awe, there is also caution. History teaches us that not all encounters are safe, that curiosity can invite danger. Some voices warn against replying, against revealing ourselves too quickly. They argue that silence is our shield, that we should listen but not speak. Others argue the opposite, that the risk is worth it, that the chance to connect outweighs the fear of the unknown. To them, to hear a signal and remain silent would be to turn our backs on the very thing that makes us human, our desire to reach out, to discover, to share. These debates echo through scientific circles, through philosophy classrooms, through the conversations of ordinary people. What should we do, if indeed the signal is real? Do we answer with mathematics, with prime numbers, with pulses of radio that reveal our intelligence but not our secrets? Do we send music, as we did once before, a golden record filled with the heartbeat of Earth? Or do we wait, patient as the cosmos, listening for more before we dare to respond? No answer comes easily, but perhaps that is fitting. For 3IATLAS itself offers no explanations, only questions. Its silent form drifts through the dark, its faint signal pulsing like a star's heartbeat. It will not slow for us, it will not linger. Already its trajectory carries it onward, out of our solar system, and back into the endless sea. Our time with it is brief, a fleeting brush with mystery. And yet, even as it departs, it leaves something behind, not a physical trace, but a shift in the human spirit. Because whether natural or intentional, whether message or noise, the signal reminds us that the universe is alive with wonder, that the story of existence is larger than our world, larger than our sun, larger even than our galaxy, and that we, fragile and small though we are, have the gift of listening. So as you lie back now, breathing softly, let your mind drift across the stars. Picture yourself aboard that interstellar traveler, gliding silently between worlds, the suns and planets sliding past in slow motion. You are surrounded by darkness, yet it is not empty. It is filled with possibility, with questions, with echoes. Somewhere, out there, another traveler may be listening, wondering if they too are alone. And perhaps, in this vast, mysterious cosmos, your paths may one day cross. The thought is soothing, like the softest lullaby that we are not solitary, that we are part of something immeasurable. The stars have always been our companions, but now they feel closer, as if they carry whispers meant for us. You do not need to solve the mystery tonight. You do not need to decide whether the signal is natural or alien, whether it is coincidence or intention. All you need to do is let the wonder settle in your heart, like starlight settling on calm water. Close your eyes, if you have not already. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the bed, safe and grounded. The mystery of 3I Atlas can wait. The universe has been speaking for billions of years. It will not stop tonight. For now, you can rest, knowing that you are part of a story far greater than yourself, a story written in light and silence, in questions and echoes. And as your breathing deepens, imagine that faint, steady rhythm still pulsing far above. Knock, knock, knock. A signal carried on the tides of space, reaching across the infinite, touching your dreams. Perhaps it is nothing more than a trick of physics. Or perhaps it is a greeting, a reminder, a promise. Whatever it is, let it rock you gently, toward sleep, like waves against the shore of eternity. The stars will keep watch. The universe will whisper on, and when you wake, it will still be there, waiting, vast, mysterious, and alive. It began, as so many great discoveries do, almost by accident. In a control room tucked away in the high desert of Chile, an astronomer leaned back from his console, rubbing his eyes against the fatigue of a long night. Data streamed across the monitors, a ceaseless river of numbers and graphs, most of which blended together in the routine hum of the universe. But that night, amid the static, a peculiar rhythm emerged. It was faint, almost buried beneath the cosmic noise, but it was there, steady, insistent, unlike the usual chaos of interstellar space. At first he thought it was interference, perhaps a passing satellite, a reflection from Earth's atmosphere, or the faint buzz of human-made machinery. But when he filtered the data and ran it again, the pattern remained. It was not random. It had shape, it had pulse. The more he looked, the more it seemed to echo like the beating of a distant heart. He hesitated before calling anyone else over. Astronomers are trained to be cautious, to doubt their own senses before leaping to conclusions. But something about this signal felt different. Something about it seemed deliberate. So, at last, he beckoned a colleague, and together they listened to the rhythm of the cosmos. Hushed, as though they were overhearing a secret not meant for human ears. News of the anomaly spread quickly through the observatory. Within hours, data was being relayed to other facilities. Telescopes pointed skyward, all searching for confirmation. And one by one, they began to detect it too. In Hawaii, in Spain, in South Africa, different instruments, different eyes, all glimpsing the same strange pulse. And when they triangulated the source, all signs pointed to the same visitor drifting through the dark. 3I Atlas. It was official. The interstellar object that had already captured the imagination of scientists and dreamers alike was now speaking, or at least, it seemed to be. In conference calls and hurried meetings, experts debated the possibilities. Could it be a natural phenomenon? Perhaps the tumbling of the object as it rotated, reflecting solar radiation in a way that mimicked a signal. Or maybe interactions with the solar wind, the charged particles from our sun, creating electromagnetic ripples as they struck its surface. Every explanation was considered, each one weighed against the stubborn fact that the signal carried rhythm, persistence, even variation. It was as though the universe was tapping its fingers on the edge of our perception, waiting for us to notice. For the scientists, the excitement was tempered with restraint. They knew the danger of jumping to conclusions. Only once before had humanity claimed to hear something from beyond, a faint signal in the 1970s, the so-called WOW signal, a burst of radio energy that lasted just 72 seconds and never returned. For decades, it had haunted researchers as the closest we'd come to hearing another voice in the cosmos. Yet it remained unresolved. And now, here was 3I Atlas, delivering something eerily similar, but longer, steadier, more insistent. The world outside the laboratories was less cautious. Within days, the story leaked into headlines. Alien probes sending signal to Earth. Read one. Mysterious interstellar visitor may not be alone, said another. Across social media, speculation ran wild. Some claimed it was a warning. Others whispered it was a beacon. And some, in quiet awe, suggested it was simply a greeting. Hello, from the deep. Governments, too, took notice. Agencies from across the globe began monitoring the situation. Secret memos passed between departments, weighing the implications. If the signal was artificial, then humanity's greatest question, are we alone, might finally have an answer. And yet, answers rarely come without consequences. In the midst of the frenzy, the astronomers tried to remain calm. They reminded the public that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. They explained, patiently, that nature is clever, that the cosmos is filled with strange phenomena we do not yet understand. And still, late at night, when the data came in and the monitors pulsed with the faint rhythm of the signal, some of them could not help but feel the hairs rise on the back of their necks. Because even scientists dream. Imagine yourself there in the observatory, surrounded by silence broken only by the hum of machinery. You lean closer to the monitor, watching the faint wave rise and fall. Rise and fall. You know it might be nothing. You know the universe is tricky, full of illusions. And yet, the longer you listen, the more it feels like a presence, like something out there is reaching across the void, knocking softly at your door. Knock, knock, knock. It was not just the rhythm itself, but the way it changed. Over days, scientists noticed subtle modulations, as if the signal were adapting, altering itself in response to something unseen. It was not the random jitter of static. It had coherence, like a melody slowly unfolding. And when they ran it through analysis, patterns began to emerge. Prime numbers whispered in the noise. Ratios that mirrored orbital paths. It was still inconclusive, still wrapped in mystery, but it was enough to stir the imagination further. Could it be that 3I Atlas was more than a rock, more than ice and dust? Could it be a vessel, or a probe, or even just a relic carrying the remnants of another world's curiosity? If so, then we were not the first to wonder. We were not the first to ask the universe if anyone else was out there. Someone or something had asked before us. The thought spread like fire. Late-night talk shows invited experts to speculate. Documentaries replayed the faint hum of the signal, overlaying it with eerie music. People lay awake in their beds, staring at the ceiling, wondering who might be on the other end of that cosmic thread. Some found comfort in the idea, imagining distant friends in the stars. Others felt a chill, fearing that not all visitors would be benevolent. And still, the signal continued. Night after night, observatories turned their ears skyward, and night after night, the rhythm returned. Not louder, not clearer, but steady, unwavering. It was as though 3I Atlas was saying, again and again, I am here, I am here. The debates grew sharper. Some scientists argued that it was irresponsible to fuel speculation without hard proof. Others countered that even the possibility was too extraordinary to ignore. Teams began to prepare more sensitive instruments, hoping to capture higher-resolution data before 3I Atlas drifted beyond reach. Time was running short. The object was moving quickly, already arcing its way past Mars, soon to slip beyond the grasp of most of our telescopes. Whatever secrets it carried, we would only have a brief window to hear them. In quiet moments, away from the noise of the media, some researchers allowed themselves to reflect. If the signal truly was artificial, what did it say about its originators? Were they still alive, somewhere far beyond our reach? Or was this probe their only surviving legacy, a bottle cast into the endless sea, drifting for eons until it finally found us? The idea was haunting, both beautiful and sad. To imagine a civilization reaching out across time, not knowing who if anyone would hear their call. And now, perhaps, we were those listeners. Humanity, small and fragile, standing on the shore of the cosmic ocean, hearing for the first time the faint echo of another voice. Breathe deeply now, and let that image settle in your mind. The observatories glowing under starlight, the monitors flickering with data, the scientists leaning close in wonder. The world holding its breath, united in curiosity. And out there, drifting silently through the dark, 3I Atlas continues on its way, whispering its rhythm into the night. Knock, knock, knock. The first weeks of investigation were filled with both exhilaration and exhaustion. Every telescope that could be turned toward 3I Atlas was brought online, scanning across frequencies, watching for the faintest flicker of change. Astronomers pulled long nights, their eyes adjusting not to the rising sun but to the glow of their monitors. For every hour of data collected, there were dozens of hours of analysis, simulations, and debates. The air buzzed with possibility, but also with uncertainty. No two explanations seemed to agree. Some believed the signal was a simple product of nature resonance produced as the object's icy surface cracked under the sun's heat, releasing jets of gas that distorted electromagnetic waves. Others argued that the variations in rhythm were too structured, too deliberate to be random. To them, the signal felt like mathematics woven into sound, like logic stitched into the fabric of the cosmos. Every theory was scrutinized. Was it the solar wind, micrometeorite impacts, a quirk of the object's rotation? Teams built computer models simulating endless combinations of forces, trying to recreate the signal artificially. Some came close, none were exact, and that was what kept the mystery alive. The signal resisted explanation, as though it were one step ahead of every hypothesis. For the scientists, this was both thrilling and frustrating. They were trained to search for answers, but 3I Atlas offered only riddles, and time was against them. The object was moving fast, skimming past Mars, its trajectory already carrying it farther and farther away. Soon, it would be too distant, too faint, slipping back into the eternal night. Their window of opportunity was closing. The tension spilled into the public sphere. Documentaries ran dramatic reenactments, complete with ominous music. News anchors speculated about alien probes with hushed voices. In online forums, ordinary people debated what the signal could mean. Was it a message, a warning, a test? The world seemed gripped by a collective curiosity, drawn together by the possibility that someone else might be out there. And yet, amid the noise, the scientists continued their quiet work. In one laboratory, a team of mathematicians pored over the signal, breaking it down into sequences. They searched for patterns, for repetitions that hinted at meaning. To their astonishment, they found something uncanny, a series of intervals that mirrored prime numbers. Not perfectly, not consistently, but enough to raise eyebrows. Was this coincidence, the random scattering of cosmic noise, or was it deliberate and ancient hallmark of intelligence? The mathematical fingerprint of thought. The discovery sparked heated debate. Some dismissed it outright, arguing that random data can always be forced into patterns if one looks hard enough. Others insisted that the odds were too slim for pure chance. For them, it was a clue, a hint that the signal carried more than static. But no one could prove it. Not yet. Meanwhile, another group focused on the signal's modulation over time. They noticed that as 3I Atlas passed through different regions of space, the rhythm shifted, as though responding to its environment. The changes were subtle slight alterations in frequency, tiny deviations in pulse, but they were consistent. Could this be a form of calibration, like a compass adjusting to magnetic fields, or was it something more conscious, more adaptive? The possibilities were dizzying. Some whispered of a probe, designed to awaken when it encountered new stars. Others speculated about relics, ancient machines, long abandoned but still carrying echoes of their makers. And then there were the boldest voices, suggesting that the signal was alive. Not in the way we understand life, but as something vast and alien. Intelligence etched into the very structure of matter itself. The debates reached fever pitch in an emergency conference, hastily organized by international space agencies. Scientists, engineers, philosophers, and government representatives gathered in a virtual meeting that stretched across time zones. The question before them was simple, yet profound. How should humanity respond? Some argued that the signal was natural, nothing more than cosmic coincidence, and that responding would be a waste of resources. Others urged caution, warning that broadcasting our presence could invite dangers we cannot imagine. Yet there were those who leaned forward with quiet conviction, insisting that this might be the first true contact in human history, and that to remain silent would be a betrayal of our own curiosity. The discussions stretched late into the night. Proposals were raised and dismissed. Tensions flared, then cooled. In the end, no consensus was reached. Humanity was divided, caught between fear and wonder, between silence and reply. And still, through it all, the signal continued. Faint, steady, relentless. It neither demanded nor persuaded. It simply was. A rhythm in the void, patient as eternity. Imagine yourself in that moment, watching the conference unfold. You hear the voices arguing across languages and accents, each filled with conviction. You feel the weight of history pressing down, knowing that the decision, whatever it may be, could shape the destiny of our species. And yet, above all the noise, your mind drifts back to the simple pulse from the stars. Knock, knock, knock. A sound so small, and yet so immense. Back in the observatories, the scientists tried something new. They pointed their most sensitive instruments toward 3I Atlas and attempted to reply. Not a message, not words, but a simple echo, a burst of radio waves sent in rhythm with the signal they received. It was a cautious experiment, a mirror held up to the cosmos. If the signal was random, nothing would happen. But if it was intentional, then perhaps, just perhaps, it might notice. For days, they listened. The signal continued, unchanged, steady as before. There was no response, no acknowledgement. Some felt disappointment, others relief. And yet, a few could not shake the feeling that the act itself mattered, that by sending their echo, humanity had taken its first step into the conversation of the cosmos. However faint it might be, the attempt remained secret at first, shared only among the tight circles of researchers. But whispers spread, as whispers always do. Soon, the world knew that humanity had spoken, however softly, into the great silence. Some celebrated the courage, others condemned the risk. But no one could deny that something had changed. The line between listener and speaker had blurred. The days grew shorter as 3I Atlas moved farther away. Each night, the signal weakened, slipping closer to the threshold of silence. Scientists rushed to capture every fragment, every last heartbeat before it faded for good. They knew the mystery would outlast them, that answers might never come. But they also knew that in listening, in daring to reach out, they had glimpsed something extraordinary. And so the investigation deepened, not only into the object itself, but into humanity's own soul. What does it mean to listen to the stars? What does it mean to find patterns in the noise? What does it mean to long for connection, even when the darkness offers none in return? Breathe deeply, and let these questions settle into your mind, like falling starlight. There are no easy answers, and perhaps that is the point. 318TLAS does not give us certainty. It gives us wonder, and in wonder, there is something greater than truth, a reminder that the universe is alive with mystery, and that we are part of it. Knock, knock, knock. The rhythm continues. The night listens, and somewhere, just beyond reach, 3IATLAS drifts on, carrying with it the echoes of our questions. The nights grew quieter as 3IATLAS slipped farther from the inner solar system. Each evening, the signal grew fainter, its once steady rhythm softened by distance until it was barely distinguishable from the static of the cosmos. Scientists adjusted their instruments, amplifying, filtering, straining to hold on. But nature was relentless. The object was moving on, returning to the dark sea between the stars, and with each passing day, its voice diminished. In control rooms and observatories, tension mixed with melancholy. For weeks, researchers had lived with the rhythm of the signal, a constant companion in their long hours of work. Now, that companion was leaving, slipping beyond their reach. They compared it to watching a ship vanish over the horizon, knowing it carried secrets you would never uncover. They wanted more time. They wanted answers. But the universe does not slow for human longing. As the signal faded, debates grew sharper. Some insisted it was nothing but a natural process, a trick of physics dressed in mystery. Others clung to the possibility that it was more an echo of intelligence, a whisper of another world. Neither side could prove itself right, and so the argument became not about evidence but about perspective. Was it better to believe cautiously, or to hope boldly? The public followed each development with rapt attention. News updates chronicled the signal's weakening, as though the world were listening to a fading heartbeat. Some communities held gatherings, watching the skies together, whispering prayers or wishes into the night. Artists painted it, musicians composed around it, storytellers wove it into myth. Already, 3IATLAS was becoming more than a scientific object. It was becoming part of human culture, a symbol of the questions that define us. In one observatory, a final experiment was attempted. Using the most powerful arrays available, scientists transmitted a simple series of pulses, patterned after the object's own rhythm. It was not meant to provoke a reply, but to mark the moment, to acknowledge the encounter. A gesture of respect, a wave across the gulf. The chances of 3I Atlas noticing, or of anyone else hearing, were infinitesimal, but to the scientists, the act itself mattered. It was a way of saying, "We were here. We heard you." No response came. The cosmos remained silent, vast and unyielding. And yet, in that silence, there was a kind of peace. Humanity had reached out, and even without reply, the gesture had meaning. It reminded them that they were not passive observers of the universe, but participants in its unfolding story. The final traces of the signal were logged weeks later, faint threads woven into the noise, too weak to study, too fragile to hold. When the last confirmed detection was recorded, a hush fell across the scientific community. Some celebrated the end of an extraordinary chapter, others mourned it, but all of them felt the weight of its passing. They had brushed against a mystery far larger than themselves, and though they were left with questions, those questions were treasures in their own right. For humanity, the legacy of 3IATLAS was not in answers but in wonder. It had reminded us that the universe is not empty, that it is alive with phenomena we cannot yet explain. It had united people across nations and cultures, if only for a moment, in shared curiosity, and it had whispered to us, in its own fading rhythm, that we are not at the end of discovery, but at its very beginning. Imagine yourself in that final night of listening. The observatory is hushed, the machines humming softly, the screens glowing with faint lines of data. You lean closer, straining to catch the last echoes. The signal is weak now, a ghost of its former self, but still, you can sense its presence. Knock, 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 a fading heartbeat from the stars. You close your eyes, and for a moment, it feels as though you are standing at the edge of eternity, listening to the universe breathe. And then, silence. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is a canvas. It is the pause before the next note, the stillness before the next wave. The fading of 3I Atlas was not an ending, but an invitation to keep listening, to keep searching, to keep dreaming. For if such mysteries can pass through our small corner of the cosmos once, they can pass again, and next time, perhaps, we will be ready. As the weeks passed, scientists returned to their routines. Papers were written, conferences held, data archived. The debates continued, as debates always do, circling without resolution. Was it natural? Was it something more? The truth remained elusive, locked within the drifting form of 3I Atlas as it sailed into the dark. Yet the memory of the signal lingered, woven into the minds of all who had heard it. Outside the labs, the world carried on. People told stories of the interstellar visitor, embellishing, imagining, turning science into legend. Children grew up hearing about the object that had whispered to Earth, about the knock from the stars that no one could explain. And in that way, 3IATLAS became timeless, not as a solved mystery, but as an open one, passed from one generation to the next. And perhaps that is the greatest gift the object gave us. Not answers, but wonder. Wonder that fuels exploration, that stirs the imagination, that keeps us gazing upward even when the night is cold and dark. Wonder that makes us humble, reminding us that our world is just one thread in a tapestry too vast to comprehend. So now, as you drift into rest, let that wonder settle around you like a blanket. Picture 3, IATLAS, far beyond our sight, gliding silently into the eternal sea, its faint rhythm carried with it into the unknown. It may never speak again. We may never know what it was or what it meant, but we will remember, and we will listen. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoes in your imagination, steady, patient, eternal, a mystery unanswered, a story unfinished. And as your breathing slows and your thoughts grow quiet, know this: the universe still holds countless secrets, waiting for the moment when we are ready to hear them. Sleep now, under the same stars that watched 3 IATLAS pass. The cosmos will keep its vigil. The questions will remain, waiting for tomorrow. And somewhere, drifting in the dark, a signal still hums faint, fading, but never truly gone. When the last whisper of the signal from 3 IATLAS slipped beyond detection, the world did not fall silent. It began to speak in new ways. Across cities, villages, and remote towns, the story of the interstellar visitor lived on, reshaped with every telling. Scientists may have archived their data and written their measured reports, but for everyone else, the event became something softer, more personal, something woven into daily life and quiet reflection. In coffee shops, people spoke of the strange rhythm they had read about, wondering aloud what it might mean. Some mimicked the knock, 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 tapping fingers on tabletops as if summoning the memory of the sound. In classrooms, children asked their teachers whether it was true that a rock from another star had spoken to Earth, and though teachers gave cautious answers, they could not hide the spark in their eyes. In places of worship, priests, monks, and imams folded the story into sermons, using it as a reminder of how vast creation is, and how small we are within it. The fading of the signal became a kind of shared loss, as though humanity had glimpsed something greater than itself and then watched it vanish. Yet out of that loss grew a strange unity. For the first time in years, people across continents and cultures had leaned in toward the same mystery, felt the same curiosity, the same mixture of fear and wonder. It was rare for the world to share such a moment, and though fleeting, it left behind a glow like starlight lingering long after the sun has set. At universities, conferences sprouted up overnight. Lectures filled with students who might have otherwise turned away from astronomy or physics now flocked to hear about interstellar visitors, about cosmic signals, about the possibility of life beyond Earth. Professors who had struggled for years to make their topics feel urgent now found themselves standing before crowded rooms, their words carrying the weight of wonder. It was as though the universe itself had written a new curriculum, and the students were eager to follow. Meanwhile, artists, musicians, and storytellers began their own investigations. Painters captured 3I Atlas as a shard of light cutting through the heavens, surrounded by mysterious auras. Musicians wove the rhythm of the signal into their songs, layering knock-like percussion into ambient soundscapes. Poets wrote verses about a cosmic visitor that spoke only in whispers. Filmmakers proposed new projects, some speculative, some documentary, all chasing the same elusive feeling that humanity had stood at the threshold of something extraordinary. In homes, in quiet bedrooms, the mystery became a bedtime story. Parents tucked their children into bed and told them of the traveler from another star, how it passed through our skies and left behind a signal that no one could explain. They told the story softly, like a lullaby, reminding their children that the universe was not only vast but alive with secrets waiting to be found. And the children, eyes heavy with sleep, dreamed of voyages beyond the stars, of riding comets and listening to voices carried on solar winds. For philosophers, the signal posed questions that could not be easily dismissed. If it were natural, what forces of the universe had conspired to create such order? If it were artificial, what beings might exist out there? And what did it mean that they or something had knocked on the door of our solar system? However briefly, entire essays unfolded around the notion that the universe had offered humanity a mirror, forcing us to confront how we see ourselves as alone or as part of a greater cosmic community. Yet, for all the speculation, no answers arrived. The signal was gone, its source receding into the void, and all that remained was interpretation. Perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the true gift of 3I Atlas was not in what it told us, but in how it made us ask, how it made us wonder. In that sense, its silence was more powerful than any clear message could have been. Imagine yourself in those days after the last echo faded. The world outside feels unchanged. Traffic flows, people hurry to work, seasons shift. And yet, somewhere deep inside, you sense that something is different. You catch yourself looking up more often, tracing the paths of stars across the sky, wondering which of them might hold the key to the mystery. You pause longer when you see the moon, or the faint glimmer of Mars in the night, as if searching for signs. The ordinary feels touched by the extraordinary, as though the cosmos has whispered to you personally. This quiet transformation unfolded everywhere, but differently for each person. For some, it was a renewed faith that the universe, however indifferent, carried meaning woven into its fabric. For others, it was a sense of humility, a reminder of how small and fragile humanity is in the face of forces it cannot control. And for still others, it was a call to adventure, a spark that pushed them toward new paths of exploration, science, or art. Governments, too, could not ignore the signal's legacy. Agencies that had once struggled for funding found themselves at the center of public attention. Budgets expanded, missions were proposed, telescopes upgraded. Politicians spoke of space, not only as a frontier of technology but as a frontier of identity of who we are, and who we might become. For once, the usual cynicism gave way to genuine enthusiasm, as if the mystery had reminded even the most pragmatic leaders that there are things beyond politics, things that touch the core of being human. But beneath all of this science, art, philosophy, politics, there was something quieter, something more personal, a lingering sense of being watched, or perhaps, of being invited. The rhythm of the signal echoed in people's minds long after it was gone. Some claimed to still hear it in their dreams, a soft knocking at the edge of consciousness. Others spoke of a feeling, a sense that the cosmos had shifted, that humanity had crossed an invisible threshold. In truth, the universe had not changed. 3-1, Atlas had always been there, sailing silently between the stars. Long before we knew to look, the only change was within us. We had listened, and in listening, we had awakened to a deeper awareness of the cosmos. That awareness would not fade, even if the signal itself did. So as the months passed, as headlines shifted and news stories took its place, the memory of 3i Atlas did not disappear. It sank deeper, becoming part of the collective imagination. Like the myths of old dove comets, as omens, of stars as gods, it became a story we told ourselves to make sense of our place in the vastness. But unlike those older myths, this one was rooted in reality, in something we had truly seen and heard, and that made it all the more powerful. And so, on quiet nights, when the world is still and the sky is clear, you might find yourself thinking of it again, the interstellar traveler, the object that whispered to Earth, the signal that no one could explain. You close your eyes, and you can almost hear it. Knock, 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 a rhythm that does not belong to us, but that now lives within us. Drifting into rest, you realize that this is the true legacy of 3i Atlas. Not fear, not certainty, but wonder. Wonder that wraps around you like the night sky, carrying you gently into dreams where the universe is alive with possibility. And in that dream, you are not small. You are part of the great story, listening, waiting, and ready for whatever comes next. In the weeks that followed the fading of the signal, the world's attention shifted from the raw data to the meaning behind it. In lecture halls, laboratories, and even late-night living rooms, people debated what the signal truly represented. Some said it was nothing more than a cosmic coincidence, a natural pulse amplified by distance and time, its rhythm born not of intention but of inevitability. Others, however, could not dismiss the sense of design. To them, the pattern was too precise, too deliberate, and in the spaces between these views, humanity found itself staring into a mirror of its own hopes and doubts. Scientists attempted to approach the matter with measured restraint. Papers were published, filled with charts and equations. Models showing how solar winds or magnetic interactions might have produced the pulse. These explanations were elegant, even persuasive. Yet, for every argument of physics, there lingered a whisper of possibility. What if this was not nature, but something more? After all, nature's rhythms are often complex, irregular, chaotic. But here was something simple, repetitive, hauntingly steady. It felt less like a storm and more like a voice. Philosophers seized upon that distinction. They argued that even if the signal were natural, its impact was undeniable. For millennia, humanity had looked to the skies and wondered if we were alone. Now, we had heard a rhythm that sounded like a knock on the door of our imagination. Whether made by intention or chance, it forced us to confront the same question anew. If the universe can speak, even accidentally, what does that mean about our place within it? Religious leaders, too, entered the conversation. Some declared the signal to be a reminder of divine mystery, a sign that creation is layered with meaning far beyond our grasp. Others warned against attributing intention where there may be none, urging humility in the face of the unknown. Still others wove the story into their teachings, suggesting that whether the signal was natural or artificial, it revealed a truth, that humanity is not the center of the cosmos, but a small part of something infinite. Meanwhile, ordinary people continued their own interpretations. For some, the signal became a symbol of hope that somewhere out there, intelligence beyond Earth might exist, and that contact, however faint, was possible. For others, it was unsettling, a reminder that forces beyond our comprehension could brush against our world without warning. Fear and wonder, hope and unease, they coexisted, like two stars orbiting the same gravity. Governments faced their own dilemmas. If the signal had been artificial, what then? Was it a greeting? A warning? A remnant of something long gone? The intelligence committees whispered behind closed doors, balancing secrecy with the growing pressure of public curiosity. And even if the signal was natural, its effect on the human psyche was powerful enough to matter. People were not only asking scientific questions, they were asking existential ones, and those cannot be confined to laboratories or classified reports. There were those who pushed further, beyond speculation, into imagination. Writers crafted elaborate tales of civilizations adrift among the stars, using 3i Atlas as a vessel for their stories. Some pictured it as a probe, abandoned yet still faithful to its mission, sending out its signal across the gulf of time. Others imagined it as a fragment of a world destroyed, carrying with it the last heartbeat of a vanished people. The truth did not matter. What mattered was that the mystery gave birth to endless possibilities. But beneath the stories, the theories, the philosophies, something deeper was stirring. The signal, brief though it was, had cracked open a door in human thought. For the first time in generations, the conversation was not about conflict or division, but about wonder. People of every background, every belief, found themselves united in a shared question. What if? And in that question lay a quiet beauty. Imagine yourself among them. In those days, when the debates were fresh and the possibilities endless, you sit in a lecture hall, the air heavy with anticipation, as a scientist steps to the podium. She clears her throat, adjusts her glasses, and projects the data onto the screen. Faint lines, jagged traces of signal, buried in static. She explains the models, the probabilities, the mechanics of solar interactions. Yet as she speaks, you cannot help but feel that the story is larger than the graphs. You hear the rhythm in your mind: knock, 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 and it feels like more than numbers. It feels like a question. Later that evening, you walk home beneath the stars. The city hums around you, but your thoughts are far above. You wonder if someone, somewhere, is looking back, watching as their signal fades across the light years. You wonder if they, too, sit beneath their skies, asking if they are alone. The thought is humbling, yet comforting. Perhaps across the darkness, curiosity itself is universal. The debates grew louder, but they were not angry. They were alive with energy, filled with the rare electricity that comes from confronting something beyond ourselves. Television programs aired roundtable discussions where astronomers sat beside philosophers and priests beside physicists. They did not always agree, but they listened, and the audience leaned in, eager to hear every possibility. It was as though the signal had reminded the world how to wonder together. Of course, there were skeptics, voices sharp with certainty. They dismissed the excitement as human arrogance, a desperate attempt to see meaning where none existed. To them, the signal was a glitch in the cosmic machinery, nothing more. But even their dismissal added to the richness of the conversation, for in denying wonder, they only sharpened it for others. In the quiet spaces between these debates, ordinary lives carried on. People still went to work, still cooked meals, still held their loved ones close. Yet in the stillness of night, as they lay in bed with eyes half closed, the memory of the signal returned. Like a lullaby, soft and insistent, it echoed in the back of the mind. Knock, knock, knock. It was not frightening, it was not urgent. It was simply there, a reminder that the universe was far vaster, far stranger, than our daily routines could ever capture. And so, even as time passed, the questions endured. Was it natural? Was it artificial? Was it a message, or just a coincidence? No one could say, but perhaps the beauty was not in the answer, but in the asking. Perhaps the gift of 3i Atlas was to remind humanity that certainty is not always the goal, that mystery itself can be a source of meaning. As you let these thoughts drift over you, picture yourself lying back beneath a clear sky, the stars scattered like lanterns across an endless sea. Somewhere out there, 3i Atlas is still moving, silent now, its faint rhythm left behind. You breathe deeply, the night air cool against your skin, and let the wonder carry you. For whether the signal was a voice or a coincidence, it has already changed the way you see the universe, and that change is a kind of message in itself. Knock, knock, knock. The rhythm fades, but it does not disappear. It lingers in your thoughts, not as proof, but as possibility. And with that possibility, the night grows softer, the stars more welcoming, as though the universe itself is inviting you to rest. As the seasons turned and the memory of 3i Atlas slowly settled into history, the world discovered that the mystery had not vanished. It had only transformed. The signal might have faded, but its echoes lived on in the minds of those who had heard about it, seen the graphs, or imagined the steady rhythm tapping across the void. Like a dream remembered upon waking, it lingered in fragments, a pulse, a whisper, a knock at the door of the imagination. In small towns far from the glow of cities, people would look up at the night sky with renewed tenderness. Parents pointed out the stars to their children, telling them stories of the interstellar traveler that had come and gone. Around campfires, the tale was retold as though it were myth, an ancient fable about a visitor from the beyond. The facts blurred, but the essence remained. Something had spoken. however briefly, and we had listened. For scientists, the absence of resolution was both frustrating and inspiring. Many devoted their lives to studying interstellar objects, designing new telescopes, and preparing for the next visitor. If one had come, others would follow, perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not for decades, but inevitably, and when they did, humanity would be ready. This sense of preparation gave the work a new urgency, but also a new humility, for they knew that the universe would reveal itself only in its own time, and no faster. Philosophers, too, found themselves returning to the signal in their writings. They spoke of it as a mirror, reflecting our deepest longings back at us. They reminded their readers that mysteries need not be solved, to have value, that sometimes the power lies in the not. A mystery that remains open continues to expand the imagination, while an answered one closes like a book. Perhaps, they suggested, the greatest gift of 3i was that it refused to be solved. And then there were the dreamers, the artists, the poets, the visionaries. For them the signal was not a puzzle but a song. They wove it into their work, into canvases drenched with starlight and melodies that rose and fell like waves. They did not seek to explain it. They sought to feel it, to carry its mystery into new forms that others could experience. And in doing so, they ensured that the story of 3i Atlas would outlive the data. Becoming part of humanity's cultural memory, even in everyday life, the presence of the signal lingered. Some people found comfort in its rhythm, imagining it as a heartbeat of the cosmos, steady and eternal. Others saw it as a reminder that we are not alone in our questions, that the universe itself may be filled with echoes waiting to be heard. And for many, it was simply a story to hold on to when the world felt too small, a reminder that above the noise of daily life, there is a sky full of mysteries waiting patiently for us to notice. Imagine, for a moment, lying in your bed at night. The room is dark, the world outside quiet. You close your eyes, and in the stillness you hear it again. Knock, 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 a rhythm soft as breath, carried not by air but by memory. It is not frightening, it is not urgent, it is simply there, reminding you that you are part of something larger than yourself. The sound becomes a lullaby, not from Earth, not from any voice you know, but from the cosmos itself. This was the strange beauty of the 3i Atlas encounter. It did not answer our questions, but it deepened them. It did not change the laws of physics, but it changed the way we feel when we look at the stars. It did not prove the existence of intelligence beyond Earth, but it reminded us to hope, to wonder, to listen. And in the end, those things may matter more than certainty. As the years went by, the memory softened, becoming less of a headline and more of a legend. Yet, legends have power. They remind us of who we are, of what we seek, of what we might become. And so, even as new generations grew up, the story of 3i Atlas continued to be told. Not as a solved mystery, but as an open one, as an invitation to keep asking questions. And perhaps, someday, another signal will come. Perhaps another traveler will pass through our skies, carrying its own rhythm, its own story. If it does, we will remember this one, and we will be ready to listen again. But even if it never happens, even if this was the only time the cosmos knocked upon our door, it has already changed us. It has taught us to listen. It has taught us to dream. So now, as you settle deeper into rest, let the mystery wash over you. Picture 3i Atlas, far beyond our reach, gliding silently through the interstellar dark. Its faint rhythm carried on like the fading notes of a song. Picture the stars above, each one a possibility, each one a reminder that the universe is vast beyond measure. And as your thoughts grow soft, let the rhythm return one last time. Knock, knock, knock. The sound fades, but it does not leave you. It remains within, steady and gentle, guiding you into dreams where the universe is alive with wonder, where mysteries wait patiently, where every silence holds the promise of discovery. Sleep now, knowing that the cosmos is listening to them, and when you awaken, the stars will still be there, watching, waiting, shining their ancient light upon you. The years after 3i Atlas passed through the solar system were marked not by silence, but by a quiet blossoming of ideas, though the object itself had slipped back into the darkness between the stars. The signal it left behind lingered in the human imagination like an ember that refused to go out. Everywhere, from lecture halls to living rooms, people found themselves returning to the same question. What had really happened during those strange weeks when the cosmos seemed to speak? Scientists who had first received the faint, repeating rhythm, carried its memory like a hidden fire. Some of them could not sleep at night, turning over the data again and again, chasing whispers hidden within the noise. Others accepted that the mystery might never be solved, but felt grateful for the spark it had lit in their work. Universities reported a surge in young students eager to study astronomy, physics, or the philosophy of science, all drawn by the allure of the unknown. To those who were young when the signal arrived, the event had not been a fleeting anomaly, but a call to adventure, promised that the universe still held secrets worth chasing. Funding agencies that had once been reluctant to invest in deep space monitoring found themselves pressured by public interest. New telescopes were commissioned, instruments more sensitive than ever before. A Arrays of radio dishes sprouted in deserts and on mountaintops, their metal arms reaching toward the sky like instruments tuned for an unseen symphony. Governments spoke cautiously about cooperation, but many nations realized that no single country could carry the burden of listening to the cosmos alone. And so, for one of the rare times in history, science reached across borders, stitching together a global network of ears turned outward. But science was only part of the story. In the streets, in art studios, in quiet bedrooms, the signal transformed into something more intimate. Musicians translated its rhythm into haunting songs that people played as they drifted to sleep, lullabies from the stars. Painters covered their canvases with abstract forms that pulsed in time with the mysterious beat, colors rising and falling like waves in a cosmic ocean. Writers began crafting stories where the signal was not just data but a voice, speaking to humanity in riddles. And in those stories, people found comfort. For the first time in a long while, the mystery of the universe felt close. Not distant, something that belonged not just to experts, but to everyone. Children, who had listened with wide eyes as adults whispered about the message from the stars, grew up with the tale as part of their mythology. It was told not as a dry report, but as a bedtime story. Once, a traveler passed by our world, and spoke, and though we could not understand its words, we heard its voice. And so, night after night, countless children drifted to sleep with dreams of visitors and endless skies. In this way, the story of 3IATLAS seeped into the fabric of memory, shaping not just the present but the imagination of the future. Of course, not everyone agreed on what the signal meant. Some saw it as proof of alien intelligence, others as an unexplained natural phenomenon, still others as a mistake magnified by human longing. And yet, unlike many disagreements that divide the world, this one seemed oddly gentle. People debated, but they also listened. They wrote essays, recorded podcasts, shared videos that blended speculation with wonder. Even in disagreement, there was unity. All could agree that something remarkable had happened, something that stirred the heart. Religions, too, began to incorporate the signal into their reflections. Some saw it as a sign of divine creation, a reminder that the universe was alive with hidden purpose. Others spoke of it as a test, a call to humility in the face of something greater than ourselves. Pilgrimages were made to observatories, where people stood in silence beside the great dishes that had captured the rhythm. In the hushed air, the experience was not scientific but spiritual, as though one were standing at the threshold of a temple built not by hands but by the cosmos itself. The legacy of the signal, then, was not a single narrative but a tapestry of many. Each person wove their own meaning from its threads. For some, it was the seed of a career. For others, it was a story to pass down. For still others, it was simply a comforting reminder that the universe is vast and full of surprises, and that even in our smallness, we are part of something grand. Yet even as the years rolled forward, one truth remained. The mystery had not been solved. The data still sat in archives, pored over by students and skeptics alike, its pattern undeniable, its meaning elusive, and that unresolved quality gave it a kind of eternal freshness. Unlike mysteries that are explained and then forgotten, this one lingered, forever suspended in possibility. There were times, late at night, when those who had been closest to the event admitted something quietly, that perhaps it was better this way. Better to wonder than to know. Better to dream of voices in the stars than to reduce them to mere equations. Better to let the universe keep some of its secrets so that the human spirit would always have something to reach for. And so, as the world moved on, the story of 3I Atlas became less about answers and more about the act of listening. Humanity had heard a sound from the dark, and in turning its ears outward, it had discovered something profound about itself. That we long to connect, that we hunger for mystery, that we are willing to believe in possibilities greater than ourselves. Tonight, as you lie here, you are part of that same story. The stars outside your window are the same stars that watched 3I Atlas glide by. The same silence surrounds you, and within that silence may still linger rhythms we have yet to hear. Close your eyes and imagine the faint pulse echoing once more. Knock, knock, not a command, not a warning, but an invitation. It is an invitation to wonder, to dream, to listen. And as you drift further into rest, remember that you are part of a species that turned its ear to the sky and heard something extraordinary. Whether the truth is ever revealed does not matter tonight. What matters is that the mystery exists, and that it belongs to all of us. So let the rhythm guide you now, steady and gentle. Let it become the heartbeat of the universe within you. And with each breath, with each pulse, drift deeper into the calm, knowing that the story is still unfolding, and that one day, perhaps, we will hear the cosmos speak again. The effort to understand 3I Atlas did not fade with time, it evolved. Within a decade of the object's passage, new observatories had risen on lonely mountaintops and far-off deserts, each one an ear pressed closer to the sky. They bore names chosen with care, some after ancient gods of wisdom, others after poets who had dreamed of the stars. Together, they formed a network that stretched across continents, united not by politics but by purpose, the purpose of listening. Night after night, these instruments gathered whispers from the heavens. Most of what they recorded was familiar: the hiss of cosmic background radiation, the faint hum of pulsars, the static storms of distant galaxies. Yet beneath it all, the memory of the signal lingered, guiding the search. Scientists could not help but imagine it repeating somewhere else. Perhaps fainter, perhaps stronger, perhaps waiting just beyond the horizon of current technology. For those who had been young when 3IATLAS passed, the pursuit of its mystery became a calling. They remembered watching the news as children, hearing the adults speak in hushed tones of a rhythm from the stars. Now grown, they filled laboratories and observatories with a quiet determination. To them, the mystery was not a story of the past, but a challenge for the future. They spoke often of the next visitor, certain that another interstellar traveler would one day appear, and when it did, they vowed to be ready. Among the scientists, there was a curious duality of feeling, a blend of obsession and humility. Obsession, because they longed to know the truth, to capture another signal, to prove that the first had not been an accident of perception. Humility, because they knew that the universe reveals itself only rarely, and never fully. It was as if they were listening for a voice that might never speak again, and yet still they listened. Outside the laboratories, the world carried the signal in quieter ways. In bustling cities, people painted murals of starscapes alive with color, each stroke echoing the rhythm of the mysterious pulse. In libraries, shelves filled with novels inspired by the event tales of visitors, of lost civilizations, of cosmic conversations that stretched across time. In cinemas, films depicted humanity's first contact, often beginning with a faint rhythm carried through the silence of space. The facts of 3I Atlas were preserved in textbooks, but its spirit lived on in art, where it could breathe freely. Some found in it a personal compass. There were those who had once felt small, unimportant in the vast machinery of life, but who now carried within them a sense of connection. They spoke of the signal as a reminder that the universe itself had reached out, however briefly, and that in that gesture they too were included. For them, the cosmos was no longer an indifferent expanse but a place alive with possibility, where even the smallest soul might belong. Communities formed around the memory. Amateur astronomers gathered not only to track planets and stars but to listen together, building makeshift radio dishes from spare parts. They did not expect to hear the signal again, yet the act of listening bound them together. In their shared silence, they found companionship. Families made traditions of watching the night sky on the anniversary of 3IATLAS's closest approach, whispering stories of the traveler before sending their children to bed. What had once been breaking news had become ritual, woven into the rhythm of life. Meanwhile, philosophers continued to wrestle with the meaning of it all. Some argued that the signal was a mirror reflecting our desire for company in the cosmos. Others insisted that it was a genuine message, proof that intelligence lay beyond Earth. A few went further, suggesting that the true significance was not in the signal itself but in our response, that humanity, in listening, had revealed its deepest self. Whatever the truth, the debates themselves became part of the legacy. They filled journals, classrooms, and cafes, turning strangers into fellow travelers on a journey of thought. Yet, amid all the wonder, there remained a shadow, the awareness that the mystery might never be resolved. Some scientists worried that humanity had already missed its chance, that 3I Atlas was a singular event, never to be repeated. They spoke quietly of the loneliness of listening, of the weight of waiting for a voice that might never return. At times, their words carried the ache of longing, like sailors scanning the horizon for a ship that would not come. But even this melancholy had its place. For in it, people recognized a truth about themselves. That longing is part of what makes us human. The desire to connect, to reach beyond ourselves, is as vital as food or air. The signal, whether or not it had meaning beyond its rhythm, had drawn that truth into the open. And so, even in sorrow, there was beauty. Consider for a moment the scene inside one of the great observatories. The night is quiet, the stars sharp against the black sky. Inside, a lone researcher sits before a glowing monitor, headphones resting gently over their ears. The data streams by, numbers and patterns scrolling endlessly. Most of it is noise, random and unremarkable. Yet the researcher listens, not just with their instruments but with their heart, hoping to catch the faintest echo of something more. They know the odds are small, but they also know that the first signal was discovered almost by accident, in the unlikeliest of ways. And so, night after night, they keep listening. In that act, repeated across the world, lies the legacy of 3IATLAS. Not in certainty, not in proof, but in the persistence of hope. The cosmos has not spoken again, but humanity has not stopped listening. The silence has become a kind of music in itself, a canvas upon which we project our dreams. As you drift now into deeper calm, let yourself join that quiet vigil. Imagine the world's telescopes turning skyward, their great dishes tilting toward the unknown. Imagine scientists, artists, dreamers, and ordinary people united by the simple act of listening. Imagine the night sky as an endless expanse, filled with secrets still hidden, waiting for the moment when they will be revealed. And as you breathe slowly, let the memory of that rhythm return once more, steady, gentle, eternal. Knock, knock, knock. A sound not of fear, not of urgency, but of possibility. Let it become part of your breath, part of your heartbeat, part of your dreams. For in listening, we are never truly alone. Decades passed, and still the rhythm of 3I, Atlas lingered, not in the air, but in memory. By then, the children who had fallen asleep to stories of the traveler were adults themselves, and many of them told the same story to their own children. It was no longer just an event in history, it had become something larger, something woven into the shared myth of humanity. The visitor from the stars had entered the realm of legend, like the first ships to cross unknown oceans, like the first steps taken on the moon. Yet there was a difference. Those older feats had left behind evidence, artifacts, photographs. The signal from 3I Atlas had left nothing so concrete. No device, no inscription, no clear message, only the rhythm, steady, unyielding, mysterious. And perhaps that was why it remained so powerful. It could not be captured, explained, or contained. It lived on as something intimate, something each person could shape in their own imagination. In museums, exhibits dedicated to humanity's search for life in the cosmos always reserved a place for the interstellar visitor. A quiet room, dimly lit, where recordings of the signal played softly in the background. Visitors stood in silence, listening to the gentle beat, each hearing it differently. Some said it felt like a heartbeat. Others said it reminded them of a drum, or the knocking of someone at a door. Children pressed their ears to speakers, their faces filled with wonder. And though the rhythm was simple, in its simplicity lay the whole of the mystery. What could it mean, if it meant anything at all? Meanwhile, the instruments humanity had built to search the skies grew ever more powerful. Space itself became part of the listening effort, with satellites carrying detectors far beyond the noise of Earth. The cosmos revealed countless wonders: exoplanets with shimmering atmospheres, galaxies colliding in vast, slow dances, black holes whispering their presence through gravitational waves. Yet amid all these discoveries, one question remained: would we ever hear another rhythm like the one from 3I Atlas? For some, the answer no longer mattered. The beauty of the mystery was enough. The signal had shown that the universe was not silent, or at least not empty. It had reminded us that in the vast silence of space, even a single sound could be enough to awaken imagination. Whether it was a natural phenomenon or the trace of intelligence, it had already changed us. And change, once begun, cannot be undone. For others, hope endured. They continued to listen, to wait, to imagine that one day a new traveler might appear, carrying with it a new story, a new rhythm, a new invitation. And though the years stretched on, that hope never fully faded. It was passed from one generation of scientists to the next, like a torch carried through the dark. But perhaps the greatest legacy of 3I Atlas was not in the instruments we built or the theories we debated, but in the way it reminded us to dream. The universe is vast, beyond our comprehension, yet in that vastness we found a connection. It may have been only a faint pulse in the static, but it was enough to remind us that we are not just observers of the cosmos, we are participants in it. Each breath we take, each story we tell, is part of that larger symphony. And so, when you look up at the night sky, you are not simply gazing at distant points of light. You are remembering. You are listening. You are part of the same story that began when a traveler brushed past our world and whispered a rhythm into our ears. That rhythm has become part of us now, a lullaby carried across time. Close your eyes and imagine the stars above you, scattered like lanterns across the black. Imagine 3I Atlas still traveling, far from our reach, its surface cold and silent, yet its memory alive within us. Imagine it gliding through endless dark, perhaps toward another world, perhaps toward no world at all. It does not matter. What matters is that for a moment, however brief, its path crossed ours, and in that crossing, we heard something extraordinary. Now let that rhythm return one last time. Knock, knock, knock. Feel it as a heartbeat, steady and calm. Let it slow your thoughts, soften your breath, ease you into rest. It is not a sound of fear or urgency, but of wonder, a reminder that you are part of a universe vast and beautiful, filled with mysteries still waiting to be discovered. As you drift into sleep, remember that the cosmos is still out there, unfolding, patient, and eternal. Somewhere, perhaps, another traveler is already on its way. Perhaps another rhythm waits to be heard. Or perhaps the mystery will remain as it is, unsolved and eternal. Either way, it is enough. For tonight, you do not need answers. You only need the comfort of knowing that you are part of a story greater than yourself. A story written not in words, but in rhythms carried through silence. A story that began with a knock upon the door of the universe. So rest now, knowing that the stars are watching, that the mystery endures, and that in your dreams, the cosmos may whisper again. Sleep, and let the rhythm carry you, steady and soft, into the vastness of peace. The memory of Three-Eye Atlas was no longer only Earth's story. As the decades passed and technology advanced, humanity began to wonder in earnest if perhaps we had not been the only listeners that night. Somewhere in the unmeasured expanse of the cosmos, might there be other civilizations unknown, cultures unseen who also kept their ears turned to the silence, waiting for a rhythm to stir. The thought was not so much terrifying as humbling. A reminder that listening itself is a universal act, a gesture that may unite lives across light years without any of us ever meeting. For as long as humanity has existed, we have lifted our gaze upward. But in the centuries since the signal of Three-Eye Atlas, our listening grew deeper, more careful, and more patient. And with that patience came a change. We no longer thought of ourselves as the only voice in the dark, but as one among countless others. Even if those others never spoke, even if they remained forever silent, the possibility of their listening was enough to change the way we imagined the universe. It was as though Three-Eye Atlas had handed us a mirror, not to reflect what was there, but to reflect what we hoped might be. The simple rhythm that had echoed from its direction carried no words, no meaning that could be translated. Yet it revealed something profound, that the act of listening was itself sacred. By listening, we admitted that the cosmos might not be empty. By listening, we confessed our longing to be part of something larger. And by listening, we transformed the silence into a kind of companionship. There were evenings in observatories when young astronomers stood under the vast dome, waiting for instruments to finish their slow rotations. Looking out at the night sky, they felt less alone, because they imagined that somewhere, perhaps on a planet circling a distant star, another being might be, standing in their own observatory, listening to. Perhaps that being had also heard a rhythm, or perhaps they were still waiting. It did not matter. What mattered was the idea that across the gulfs of time and space, life might be bound by this shared act of hope. The question of the signal's purpose still hovered, unsolved. Was it a beacon, sent intentionally? Was it an accident, a natural phenomenon shaped into meaning by our longing? Or was it something else, something our minds could not yet grasp? Over time, the importance of the answer began to fade. What remained was the story of a knock that awakened us, a rhythm that traveled not only through space, but through memory, culture, and imagination. In schools, the event was taught not as a solved mystery, but as an open one, a lesson in humility. Children learned that science was not only about answers, but about questions, about the courage to admit what we do not know. Teachers encouraged their students to imagine what it might feel like to live on another world, to look up at a different sky, to wait for a rhythm that may never come. And in those imaginings, seeds of empathy were planted. To imagine another civilization was to imagine another heart, another longing, another story. In quiet homes, people spoke of the signal as though it were an old friend. They remembered where they were when they first heard of it, how they had felt hearing that something beyond comprehension had brushed against our world. Some described the experience as a reminder of childhood, of lying awake at night, hearing faint sounds in the dark, unsure if they were real. The memory of Three-Eye Atlas carried with it that same mixture of uncertainty and wonder. Meanwhile, storytellers carried the mystery forward into new forms. Novels imagined civilizations whose only form of communication was rhythm, whole cultures built around pulses and silence. Musicians wove the signal into compositions that blended ancient drums with electronic echoes, creating soundscapes that seemed to hover between Earth and the stars. Painters and sculptors used spirals and repeating forms to suggest infinity, capturing in shape what could not be spoken in words. Through all of this, a realization slowly grew, that perhaps the purpose of Three-Eye Atlas was not to deliver a message, but to awaken us to the act of listening itself. It was less like a teacher and more like a reminder, nudging us toward a posture of humility and openness. In this way, the traveler had given us a gift, not knowledge, but wonder. Imagine now lying beneath a sky filled with stars. The air is still, the world quiet. You close your eyes, and in the silence, you feel the rhythm returning. Knock, knock, knock. You know it may have been a coincidence, or a mistake, or something beyond explanation. Yet in that sound, you feel connection not only to the stars, but to all who have ever listened, who are listening now, and who will listen long after you are gone. That is the legacy of Three-Eye Atlas, not a solved mystery, not an answered question, but an invitation to be part of the greater listening. It reminds us that we are not just watchers of the universe, but participants in its unfolding. Each time we look upward, each time we tilt an instrument toward the sky, each time we tell the story of the signal to a child falling asleep, we are continuing that act. The thought that others may also be listening, that across some impossible distance, another being might pause, tilt their head, and wonder at the same silence carries with it a strange peace. For it means that even in the vastness, even in the uncertainty, we are not alone in our longing. And longing itself is a kind of connection, a thread invisible but strong, binding life across the stars. So as you breathe deeply now, let yourself become part of that listening. Imagine the silence of space, vast and infinite. Imagine millions of ears, human and perhaps not human, all turned toward that silence, waiting with patience and hope. Imagine that the rhythm of 3IATLAS is not gone but woven into that silence, like a soft echo folded into the night. With each breath, with each beat of your heart, you are joining that chorus of listeners. You are part of the same story that began with a simple knock, steady and calm. And as you drift into rest, remember, listening is enough. To listen is to belong. To listen is to hope. To listen is to be awake to the mystery of the universe. The rhythm itself was never complicated. 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats again. No modulation, no variation, no melody. And yet, the simplicity of it made people wonder all the more. If it had been noise chaotic, shapeless, random, it might have been easier to dismiss. But order has a way of capturing attention, of whispering that behind it there might be intention. Scientists of the time devoted years to studying the data, reanalyzing the original recordings with every new tool that emerged. At first, they looked for familiar signatures. Was the rhythm caused by some cosmic object rotating and producing pulses of energy? Was it the echo of a natural alignment, where magnetic fields and radiation combined to form a repeating pattern? Some claimed it might have been an interstellar meteor shower, their trails crossing in just the right way to mimic intention. And yet, no explanation seemed to close the case completely. The rhythm remained stubbornly clear, almost too clear, as though it wanted to be heard. Some researchers went further. They asked whether the rhythm might be a kind of universal language, not of words, but of structure. After all, rhythm does not belong to one culture. It belongs to life itself. The beat of a heart, the cycle of day and night, the waves that rise and fall on a shore, all of these are rhythms. What if the cosmos itself had chosen rhythm as its way of speaking to us? Others warned against such leaps. Human beings are pattern makers. They reminded us, we see shapes in clouds, faces in shadows, voices in silence. The risk of projecting meaning onto the unknown was always high. Perhaps the signal was nothing more than a trick of coincidence, dressed in the clothing of order by our longing. Perhaps we were never meant to hear it at all. Still, the rhythm would not let go. Decades after the first recording, artists, philosophers, and spiritual thinkers continued to ask the question in their own ways. What if the signal was neither accident nor message, but something in between? A sound born of natural processes that nevertheless carried the power to awaken us. After all, even if it had no meaning in itself, the way it reshaped our imagination gave it meaning in us. Imagine for a moment that the signal had been intentional. If that were true, then something had reached across the abyss of space and touched our world with 3 quiet knocks. It is difficult to comprehend the scale of such a gesture. For a signal to travel across light years to thread its way through cosmic noise. To arrive at our instruments intact, it would mean that whoever sent it had knowledge far beyond ours. It would mean they knew we were here. And perhaps, it would mean they wanted to be known. But imagine the opposite, that it was an accident, a byproduct of something entirely natural. Does that make it any less significant? A volcano erupts on Earth without intention, yet its ash can circle the globe, shaping climates and cultures. A star explodes, and though it does not mean to, it seeds the universe with the elements of life. If the rhythm of 3I Atlas was only an accident, it was still an accident that became a story. An accident that reminded us how small we are and how vast the cosmos is. And then there is the third possibility, the one that lies beyond intention and accident. What if the rhythm was not a signal at all, but a reflection of something deeper, something woven into the very structure of the universe? Just as water flows in waves and light bends into spectra, perhaps the cosmos itself breathes in rhythm, and we simply overheard it once, by chance. If that were true, then 3IATLAS was less a messenger and more a mirror, showing us a truth we had forgotten, that all things move in cycles. All things live in patterns. All things belong to a greater beat. As people pondered these possibilities, the signal grew larger in our collective memory than in its raw form. It became a parable, a story told to remind us of humility. Some spoke of it as the universe knocking politely on our door. Others said it was like a stone thrown into a pond, its ripples spreading across centuries. And still others thought of it as a lullaby, not for one child, but for a whole species, rocking us gently into the awareness that we are not alone in the dark. In the quiet hours of the night, when observatories were still, the idea of the signal took on its softest form. Astronomers would close their eyes and imagine themselves on the surface of 3I Atlas, standing on its rocky skin, feeling the silence of interstellar space pressing around them. And then, somewhere deep inside the rock, they would imagine a pulse, faint but steady, like a heart beating in the cold. Whether that heart was alive, mechanical, or only imagined did not matter. What mattered was that it reminded them that life, in all its fragility, is always listening for company. The signal also influenced the way humanity began to think about time. If it had come from far away, then the ones who sent it or the processes that produced it might already be gone. We were listening to an echo of a past that no longer existed. The thought brought a strange tenderness. To hear a signal long after its origin has vanished is to share in a kind of cosmic memory, to hold in our hands the trace of something we will never fully know. It was a reminder that the universe itself is old, and that we are children playing in its shadow. And yet, even if its source had faded, the signal was alive in us. Each retelling, each reflection, each story told at bedtime gave it new breath. In this way, it had crossed a greater distance than space. It had crossed the distance of meaning. From the cold silence of the cosmos, it had entered the warmth of human thought. That journey was longer, in some ways, than the journey across light years. Now, as you listen, you may find yourself imagining those 3 knocks. Steady, simple, impossible to ignore. Do they come from a hand, a machine, or from the rhythm of the universe itself? Perhaps you cannot decide, and that is the point. The beauty of the signal lies not in the answer, but in the question it leaves us holding. It asks us to wonder. It asks us to imagine. It asks us to rest in the knowledge that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but cherished. So let your breathing slow, matching the rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. Let the question linger gently, without urgency, like a soft cloud drifting across the sky. Whether the signal was intentional, accidental, or something beyond both, it has already done its work. It has already made us pause. It has already made us listen. And listening, in the end, is enough. In the years after the signal, something subtle began to change in the way humanity thought of itself. It was not sudden, nor was it dramatic. It was quieter, like a seed planted in soil, unnoticed at first, but slowly growing roots. The rhythm of 3i Atlas had woven itself into the fabric of our imagination, and with it came a new way of seeing. Borders, politics, rivalries, all the things that once divided you still existed, of course. Yet, for those who remembered the story of the signal, those divisions seemed smaller, less permanent. After all, when a messenger, the shadow of one, traveled across light years to touch our fragile world, the idea of nations seemed less absolute. We were all, in the end, listeners, on the same planet, leaning against the same window, peering out into the same night. This sense of unity did not erase our differences, but it softened them. A farmer in a quiet village, a child gazing through a telescope, a scientist tracking data late at night, all were connected by the same curiosity, the same pull of mystery. Even those who never looked at the stars, who lived their lives close to the ground, still felt a whisper of its presence. The story of 3i Atlas became like folklore, carried in lullabies, painted on walls, echoed in poems. It was no longer the property of scientists alone. It belonged to everyone. And with this shared story came a gentler kind of courage. For if the universe had reached out to us 7 accidentally, then perhaps it was not indifferent. Perhaps it was not an empty stage, but a living, breathing expanse, full of rhythms we had yet to hear. That thought gave strength to dreamers, to explorers, to children lying awake at night, wondering what it might feel like to listen forever. There were gatherings, in the decades that followed, where people would meet, not to argue, not to solve, but simply to listen together. They would replay the recording of the signal 3 simple knocks, endlessly repeating and, then sit in silence, imagining the void it had traveled through. Some described these gatherings as almost spiritual, a ritual of listening, a way of acknowledging the immensity beyond us, for in that immensity we felt less alone. Over time, the signal became more than a mystery. It became a mirror of who we were becoming. To some, it symbolized humility, the reminder that we are small. To others, it symbolized hope, the reminder that we may not be alone. And to still others, it symbolized patience, the truth that some questions may never be answered, but are worth asking anyway. Imagine yourself now in one of those gatherings. The room is dim, the air still. A recording hums softly in the background. Knock, knock, knock. People close their eyes, and in the darkness, the rhythm feels like a heartbeat. You breathe with it, you slow with it, and suddenly, you feel connected not only to those around you, but to every listener across time. You feel linked to the scientists who first captured it, to the children who heard it in classrooms, to the storytellers who wove it into tales. You feel part of a chain stretching outward, linking past, to present, to future. In that chain, the meaning of the signal no longer matters. Whether it was sent by intelligence, or born of chance, or simply woven into the fabric of reality, has already done what it needed to do. It has made us listen. It has reminded us that silence is not emptiness, but possibility. And in that possibility lies beauty. Perhaps that is the greatest legacy of 3i Atlas, not certainty, but wonder. Certainty closes doors, but wonder keeps them open. Certainty says, here is the answer. Wonder whispers, there may always be more. And when you live with wonder, the universe itself becomes larger, softer, more welcoming. The stars no longer feel like distant, burning points, but like companions scattered across the night, each carrying secrets we may one day hear. So, as the story of the signal comes to rest in your mind tonight, let yourself lean into that wonder. Picture yourself adrift in the quiet of space, far from Earth, far from noise, floating in calm silence. Around you, the stars shimmer gently, endless and patient, and then, faint but steady, you hear it. Knock, knock, knock. The rhythm does not demand anything of you. It does not insist on answers. It only invites you to listen, to breathe, to belong. You are part of this story now. By remembering the signal, by letting it echo inside you, you have become another link in the chain. You do not need to solve it. You only need to hold it, like a small flame in the dark, warm and fragile, passed from hand to hand across generations. That is enough. That is more than enough. So breathe deeply, and let the rhythm fade into the background of your thoughts. Let it guide you gently, toward rest. For the mystery of 3IATLAS is not a puzzle to be finished, but a lullaby to be carried, softly, into sleep. Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine a future night. The earth has turned, as it always has. But the skies above are no longer watched by small telescopes and lonely observatories. Instead, entire valleys are filled with instruments, enormous dishes angled toward the heavens. Delicate webs of sensors stretched across deserts and oceans, all tuned to the quiet murmur of the cosmos. Humanity has grown older, wiser, perhaps gentler. And through all of this growth, one thing has remained, the memory of a rhythm. Knock knock. Knock. The echo of 3I Atlas still hums softly in the story of who we are. For many centuries, human ambition was measured by distance. How far could we travel? How many planets could we reach? But in the wake of the signal, ambition began to shift. Distance was no longer the measure. Instead, patience was. Listening became our new frontier, not racing outward but opening ourselves inward, making our attention wide enough to hear whatever faint whispers the universe might share. Scientists, inspired by that long-ago rhythm, built instruments not only to look deeper, but to listen longer. Radio arrays sprawled across the deserts of Australia and Africa, weaving together signals from every corner of Earth into one vast ear. Orbiting satellites drifted high above the noise of our world, listening with clarity impossible from the ground. And in the cold silence beyond our solar system, probes were launched, machines designed not to conquer, not to claim, but simply to wait, drifting like patient seeds through interstellar space, their delicate antennas open to silence. Children grew up hearing about these projects not as weapons or tools of control, but as extensions of a very old dream, to not be alone. In classrooms, teachers told the story of 3I, ATLAS, not with charts or equations alone, but with pauses where the students were asked to listen, to imagine the silence of space, and to feel the weight of what it meant to hold a question without rushing for an answer. In this way, listening became not only a scientific act, but a cultural one, woven into the rhythms of life. In time, listening became an art of its own. Entire festivals were built around silence, gatherings where people came together to sit in the stillness, sometimes in domes that mimicked the night sky, other times beneath the actual stars. These festivals were not celebrations of answers, but of questions. People shared stories of how they had felt the signal in their own lives, how they had heard its echo in a song, or in the steady beat of a heart, or in the quiet knock of rain against a window. The signal itself had long since faded from the instruments, but it had grown in another way. It lived in memory, in ritual, in imagination. And through it, humanity learned something remarkable, that waiting could be powerful. In a world that once hurried always toward the next, the signal taught us that patience was not absence, but presence. To wait, to listen, to be silent, these were no longer empty gestures. They were acts of connection, ways of aligning ourselves with the larger rhythm of the cosmos. Imagine, if you will, the Earth itself as a listener. From its forests and oceans, from its cities and deserts, countless instruments stretch their ears outward, waiting for another rhythm. The entire planet hums with quiet anticipation. And though nothing new may arrive for centuries, the act itself is meaningful. The Earth is listening, and through it, so are we. It is easy to forget how extraordinary this is. For most of history, humanity looked at the stars with awe, but without expectation. They were distant lights, beautiful and unreachable. But now, because of 3I, ATLAS, the stars are not only lights. They are potential voices. Every point of light in the sky is no longer mute, but a door that might, one day, open. The universe has become less silent, not because we have heard more, but because we now understand how much more there might be to hear. This change is subtle, but profound. Think of it, entire generations of listeners who may never receive another signal, who may live their entire lives in silence, and yet, who dedicate themselves to the act of listening anyway. Their patience is not wasted, for it is not measured in discoveries alone. It is measured in openness, in humility, in the courage to admit that the universe is larger than we can ever grasp. As you imagine this future, let yourself picture the instruments themselves, great fields of listening dishes gleaming under alien suns, delicate webs of receivers humming in the dark of interstellar space. Picture them not as cold machines, but as extensions of our longing, our ears stretched wide across the galaxy. And picture the scientists who tend them not restless, but calm, watching data scroll across their screens like tides. They know the odds of hearing another rhythm are small, but they also know that the act itself connects them to something greater. And beyond the scientists, picture the children of this future. They sit beneath artificial skies on Mars or floating colonies near Saturn, but they are told the same story, of how, once, long ago, a traveler passed through our solar system and left behind a rhythm. These children close their eyes and imagine what it must have been like to be the first to hear it. They learn, as we once did, that listening is not only a scientific act, but a human one. To listen is to hope, to connect, to be part of something infinite. And now, as you breathe slowly, you too are part of that same act. The future of listening is not far away, not something only for machines or scientists. It is here, in the silence you carry with you. Each breath is a signal. Each heartbeat is a rhythm. By lying quietly, by letting your imagination drift, you are joining a legacy that stretches across centuries. You are listening, and in that listening, you are connected to all who came before and all who will come after. So rest now in the knowledge that humanity's future is not one of conquest, but of patience. Our greatest achievement may not be how far we travel, but how deeply we learn to listen. And as you drift deeper into stillness, let yourself imagine the earth as it listens, quiet, steady, patient, holding its breath for the next rhythm to arrive. When a mystery lingers long enough, it begins to take root in the human spirit. The rhythm of 3IATLAS, though simple and unanswered, was no exception. In the centuries after it was first heard, it spread not just through science but through culture, seeping quietly into the fabric of human thought until it was no longer only a question of astronomy, but a question of meaning. Some traditions embraced the rhythm as prayer. In monasteries, monks timed their meditations to its steady beat. 3 breaths, a pause, 3 breaths again. They spoke of it as the universe's own mantra, a soundless chant reminding us to slow, to notice, to be still. For them, the signal was not a message from another civilization, but a reminder from the cosmos itself that silence is sacred. To listen was to pray, and to pray was to listen. In other places, the rhythm was woven into art. Dancers choreographed movements that followed its pattern, their bodies swaying with a quiet repetition that echoed across candlelit halls. Musicians carried it into their compositions, hiding it in percussion or weaving it into electronic pulses, so that audiences might feel the echo of the stars without even knowing it. Painters worked with spirals and triplets of color, hinting at the knocks without ever naming them outright. In these works, the signal lived again not as data, but as beauty. Philosophers, too, found in the rhythm a wellspring of reflection. Was it not true, they asked, that all of life is rhythm, the beating of hearts, the cycling of seasons? The rise and fall of civilizations will move in patterns of repetition and pause. Perhaps the signal was not something foreign, but something deeply familiar, an echo of what we already carry within us. To listen to it was to listen to ourselves, reflected back from the void. On Mars, where the first human settlements struggled to build a sense of identity, the rhythm took on yet another form. Colonists, far from the cradle of Earth, adopted it as a symbol of belonging. Children born beneath red skies learned lullabies that ended with 3 soft taps on the chest. A way of saying, we are not alone, even here. In the harsh silence of that world, the rhythm became a comfort, a thread tying them back to the story of Earth and forward into the future. In this way, 3IATLAS became not just a traveler through space, but a traveler through imagination. Each culture, each community, gave it a new shape. Some saw it as a gift, others as a puzzle, still others as a mystery best left untouched. But in all of these interpretations, one truth endured: the signal had made humanity feel larger than itself. By listening to it, people felt part of something greater, something unending. The idea of cosmic empathy began to take hold. If we could imagine others listening to beings we might never meet, civilizations we might never see, then perhaps empathy was not limited to Earth alone. Perhaps the very act of imagining those others made us more capable of kindness here, among ourselves, for if someone across the stars might one day hear our rhythm, then surely the stranger across the street was not so distant after all. Scholars of ethics built entire schools of thought around this idea. They taught that the rhythm was a reminder of our responsibility, that by listening, we had entered into a covenant of sorts. If the universe had whispered to us, then we must whisper back, not with signals of technology, but with signals of compassion, of care, of a willingness to see ourselves as part of a vast, interconnected web of life. Listening was no longer just about space, it was about each other. This sense of connection touched even those who had no interest in science or philosophy. A child lying in bed on a colony orbiting Saturn might hear the story from their parents, who spoke softly of the time long ago when Earth first listened. That child, staring out a window at the ringed giant glowing in the distance, might wonder what it would feel like if one day another rhythm came, clear and undeniable. Would they hear it in their lifetime? Or would they, like countless others before them, live their whole lives in the waiting? It did not matter. The wonder itself was enough. Imagine now, that child, pressing their ear against the glass as if they might catch the faintest sound from the void. The silence hums, patient and endless, and in that silence they imagine the rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. It is not real, not in that moment, and yet it feels as though it could be. The child drifts to sleep, with the echo still in their mind. Part dream, part memory, part hope. And so, the signal endured, not as noise in a recording, but as something much more enduring, a ritual, a symbol, a reminder. It taught us that listening is not only about instruments or satellites. Listening is about attention, about giving space for silence to speak, about opening ourselves to the possibility of connection. Whether that connection was ever fulfilled by another voice in the cosmos no longer mattered. The act itself had become sacred. So, as you breathe slowly now, you too are part of this ongoing story. With each inhale, you listen. With each exhale, you answer. Your body becomes its own rhythm, steady and gentle, mirroring the rhythm that first came from the stars. In this way, the mystery of 3IATLAS continues not only in science or in culture, but in you, here, in this quiet moment of listening. There are moments in history when humanity learns not through answers, but through questions that refuse to fade. The signal from 3IATLAS was one of those questions. Its pattern 3 knocks and a pause was simple, yet it lived far longer than any equation or discovery tied to it. The mystery became less about where it came from, and more about how it made us feel. Small, yes, but also connected, threaded into a universe that seems suddenly less indifferent, less silent. Think of the way the ocean sounds when you hold a seashell to your ear. You know the waves are not truly inside the shell, and yet, the sound feels vast, as if you are listening to the memory of tides. The signal was like that, whether it was a true transmission or only a trick of space. It carried the sensation of listening to something greater than ourselves, a tide moving through the dark. And like the seashell, its power came not from certainty, but from imagination. Over time, the rhythm was no longer a puzzle to be solved, but a presence to be lived with. It was like a lighthouse on the farthest shore, its light dim, its purpose unknown, yet steady enough to guide. Entire generations grew up with its echo tucked into their collective stories. Some carried it as a beacon of hope, some as a reminder of humility, and some simply as a gentle lullaby whispered across the centuries. On Earth, people began to notice rhythms all around them that echoed the signal. 3 heartbeats felt against a lover's chest before sleep, the triple chime of bells marking the passing of an hour in a quiet town, the slow tap of rain against a window at night. 1, 2, 3, then silence. Each rhythm became a reflection of the larger one, an invitation to see the cosmos not as a distant stage but as something intimately tied to daily life. For the settlers beyond Earth, the rhythm carried a different weight. In the silence of long voyages, where years passed in the shadow of stars, the memory of 3I Atlas was like company. Crews on generational ships whispered the knocks into the walls of their cabins, passing the sound down like a family heirloom. Children who had never seen Earth still knew the story of the signal, told with the kind of reverence one gives to myths. To them, it was proof that space was not empty. Space listened, and maybe, just maybe, space spoke. Imagine yourself among them, far from the cradle of Earth, gliding silently between worlds. You settle into rest, surrounded by the gentle hum of your ship, and in that quiet you begin to imagine the sound. Knock, 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 a pause. Then again, you know it is not real in that moment, and yet, the imagination alone brings comfort. You feel less alone, as though the stars themselves are breathing with you. This is what the signal had become. Not a fragment of data, but a shared ritual of listening. It asked nothing of us but patience, and in return, it gave us a sense of belonging. Not belonging to a planet, or to a species, but to the universe itself. And in that belonging, we discovered something new about ourselves, that to listen deeply, even in silence, is an act of love. The rhythm's legacy was not in proof, but in possibility. It opened the mind to the idea that we are part of a conversation still unfolding. Perhaps the signal was only ever an accident, the echo of a comet breaking apart in ways we had yet to understand. Perhaps it was something more, a voice carried across unimaginable distances. But whether natural or intentional, its gift was the same. It made us look outward, it made us imagine, and it reminded us that silence, too, can be alive. Now, as you listen to these words, you are joining in that ritual of patience and imagination. With each breath, you echo the same rhythm. Inhale, exhale. A pause, inhale, exhale. The body becomes its own signal, simple and steady, a message to the universe that says, I am here, I am listening. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere, in the deep silence of another sky, something listens back. So let yourself drift now. Drift as the stars drift, as comets wander, as signals ripple across eternity. Drift with the rhythm of 3 knocks, steady and soft. Drift with the pause that follows, wide and infinite. Drift with the knowledge that you, too, are part of this story, a listener, in a vast chorus of listeners. Each one waiting, each one wondering, each one dreaming. The mystery remains, but that is its gift, for in mystery the heart learns to rest, and in rest we learn to dream. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest mysteries. What begins as a moment of astonishment and urgent question often drifts into legend when carried across centuries. And so it was with the signal from 3IATLAS. At first, it was news, a headline, a puzzle, an urgent wonder that gripped scientists and storytellers alike. Then it became history, something children learned in classrooms and dreamers recalled in quiet nights. And eventually, it became something larger still, a myth woven into the slow current of time, a rhythm that outlived empires. Imagine the world, centuries from now. The cities of Earth have shifted, grown, and perhaps faded in places. Coastlines have redrawn themselves as oceans move with the patience of ages. Yet in some quiet library, preserved against the weathering of years, a small recording still plays. It is faint, almost lost in the static of time, but there it is. Knock, knock, knock. A pause, then again. To those who hear it, it feels like an echo from another age, the voice of ancestors who once stared up at the sky with questions still alive today. Some approach it with reverence, as though they are listening to a sacred chant. Others with curiosity, trying to imagine what it must have been like to be alive in the age when the signal first arrived. In this way, the signal becomes more than data but becomes a bridge, carrying imagination across the gulf of centuries. Generations are born, grow old, and fade, but the story remains. Families pass it down, storytellers reshape it, and cultures reinterpret it. A child in one distant future might hear it not as 3 knocks, but as 3 stars that once lit the night sky and then vanished. In another place, the rhythm becomes a tale of 3 travelers crossing the void, always pausing, always returning. In yet another, it becomes the measure of time itself, a way of pacing rituals, songs, and meditations. What began as a scientific anomaly grows into a symbol of endurance. It whispers a lesson humanity carries forward, that some mysteries are meant to linger. Not every question demands an answer. Some simply remind us of how vast the unknown truly is. And yet, there is always rediscovery. Imagine a far-off age when explorers, long separated from Earth, stumble across the old recordings again. Perhaps they are settlers on a world orbiting another star. Perhaps they have only fragments of Earth's history, bits of language and myth, their origins blurred by time. When they find the pattern knock knock knock, they will wonder if it was meant for them. They will not know the full story, but they will feel its weight, its strangeness, its pull. In rediscovery, the mystery lives again. In this way, the signal becomes immortal, not because it is solved, but because it is remembered. Like ancient constellations still traced across the sky, the rhythm becomes a kind of compass, not pointing to answers, but pointing to wonder itself. And wonder, unlike knowledge, cannot be lost. It flows forward, from one age to the next, always reshaped, always renewed. Now picture the long arc of time. Thousands of years have passed. Humanity has spread among the stars, building new homes under alien suns. Some colonies remember Earth only dimly, as a place of origin wrapped in story. Yet even there, in those faraway nights, children press their ears to walls and whisper the knocks 1, 2, 3. They do not know why they do it. They only know that it feels right, as though it connects them to something older, deeper, faster than themselves. And perhaps, in those same ages, others are listening too. Perhaps civilizations we cannot yet imagine are also keeping vigil in the silence. Each with their own stories, each carrying their own myths of distant signals and ancient rhythms. Perhaps across the darkness, we are all linked by the same act, the act of listening, the act of remembering. Time, then, does not erase the mystery, it transforms it. What was once urgent becomes gentle. What was once strange becomes familiar. What was once frightening becomes comforting. The signal shifts shape but never disappears, like a song that survives by being sung in different voices, across different lands, in different centuries. And so the story continues. Each age inherits it, each age makes it its own, and each age passes it forward. The signal from 3IATLAS becomes not just an event, but a tradition, the tradition of waiting, of wondering, of honoring the silence as much as the sound. As you breathe slowly now, you too are part of this inheritance. Your breath is a rhythm: inhale, exhale, pause. With each cycle, you echo the same patience that carried the signal through time. You are linked to all who came before you, all who will come after, by this simple act of listening, of being. The centuries stretch outward, endless as the stars, and still the rhythm lingers. Knock, knock, knock. A pause. Then again. Always again. There comes a point when a question lingers so long that it becomes part of the human fabric. The signal from 3I, Atlas, faint and unresolved, inspired not only curiosity but also a new kind of devotion. People began to ask themselves, what if silence itself could be preserved? What if listening could be an art form, something worth handing down as carefully as poetry or music? Out of this desire grew what came to be called the archives of listening. At first, they were simple projects. Universities stored the original recordings of the signal, cleaned and digitized, placed within climate-controlled chambers. These efforts were small, modest, almost mundane. But with time, the idea took on a life of its own. If one signal could mean so much, then perhaps every fragment of cosmic sound, the hiss of solar winds, the crackle of pulsars, the deep rumble of planetary atmospheres, deserved to be preserved. Humanity began building libraries not of words, but of sounds gathered from the sky. Soon, every observatory, every satellite, every deep space probe contributed. Streams of static, bursts of radiation, the faint whispers of interstellar dust were catalogued, labeled, and stored. What began as data collection shifted into something else entirely, an art of curation. People spoke of these libraries as if they were sacred vaults. Each entry not just a measurement but a piece of memory, a heartbeat of the cosmos captured in time. Imagine stepping into one of these archives. The air is still, the walls lined with crystalline servers humming softly. Within them rests not only the signal from 3IATLAS, but centuries of silence and sound. You put on a headset, close your eyes, and listen. At first, there is only quiet. Then, slowly, the faint murmur of ancient stars fills your ears. A soundless presence transformed into something you can feel. It is not music, yet it stirs like music. It is not language, yet it speaks. Artists found in these archives endless inspiration. Composers began weaving the sounds of pulsars and quasars into symphonies. Poets borrowed the language of static, writing lines that flickered like bursts of radiation. Painters used the idea of the archives themselves, vaults of silences, metaphors for memory and forgetting. In this way, the act of listening grew beyond science. It became a form of culture, a reminder that silence, too, is worthy of reverence. There were skeptics, of course. Some wondered why humanity poured such effort into storing noise when so many questions here on Earth remained unsolved. But others countered that it was precisely in such acts that humanity defined itself, not in what it needed to do to survive, but in what it chose to preserve simply because it was beautiful, because it held mystery. And so the archives grew. On the colonies scattered among the stars, the archives became even more vital. For settlers who had never known Earth's sky, who looked up at alien constellations unfamiliar and strange, the recordings were a link to continuity. Listening to the archived hum of Earth's auroras or the faint radio chatter of an old probe orbiting Jupiter gave them a sense of belonging. They might be far from home, but the sounds reminded them that they were part of a greater story, one that stretched backward to Earth and outward to the stars. Generational ships carried smaller versions of these archives with them. In the long silence of travel, families would gather to listen. Sometimes they played the recording of the signal itself, 3 faint knocks, steady and strange. Other times they chose a pulsar's beat, rhythmic and hypnotic, or the soft hiss of interstellar dust. Listening became a ritual, a way of marking time, of falling asleep, of reminding themselves that the silence surrounding them was not emptiness but presence. And always, woven through these sounds, was the memory of 3IATLAS. It remained the most beloved entry, not because it was the loudest or clearest, but because it was unresolved. Every generation listened and wondered anew. Was it chance? Was it artifact? Was it voice? The question was never answered, and so the listening continued. Over time, philosophers began to suggest that the archives were not about preserving the past at all. They were about preparing for the future. For if ever another signal came clear, deliberate, undeniable, then humanity would be ready. It would know how to listen, how to recognize meaning in rhythm, how to treat silence not as absence but as context. The archives were not only memory, they were rehearsal. There is a strange comfort in this thought, that every sound, every silence is being carried forward, waiting for a listener not yet born. Perhaps one day, long after our lives are gone, someone will sit in a quiet chamber, place a headset to their ears, and listen. They will hear the knocks, faint and steady, and they will know that we were here, that we listened, that we cared enough to remember. And perhaps they, too, will close their eyes, breathe slowly, and drift into sleep, with the rhythm echoing softly in their minds. Inhale, exhale, a pause. The body joins the archive. The act of listening continues. In the end, the story of 3IATLAS circled back to where it began. Silence. The faint rhythm, so carefully studied, so passionately debated, was never explained to satisfaction. Some called this a failure, a question that would forever remain unanswered. But for others, the absence of certainty was the very heart of its gift. The signal was never about answers. It was about teaching us how to live with mystery, how to find peace in the spaces between knowing. Silence, after all, is not nothingness. It is presence in disguise. Think of the quiet of a forest at night. Beneath the stillness, life stirs breathing, leaves trembling, roots drinking deep in the dark. The silence of space is much the same. It holds within it the hum of unseen stars, the pulse of distant galaxies, the slow drift of comets older than our history. To call it empty is to miss its depth. The signal reminded humanity of this truth. By listening for it, people learned to listen to silence itself. Astronomers spoke less of waiting for answers and more of keeping company with the unknown. Poets wrote of the signal as a lullaby from the cosmos, a song that never finished its verse but kept humming anyway. Spiritual teachers described it as an invitation to patience, a a reminder that not all conversations need closure. Perhaps that is why the rhythm became so deeply tied to rest. For what is sleep if not a surrender to silence? Each night, we close our eyes and allow ourselves to drift into the unknown, trusting that the darkness will carry us safely until morning. The signal was a cosmic mirror of that ritual. 3 knocks, a pause, then nothing. Yet in that nothing, comfort, in that pause, trust. Imagine yourself listening now. Inhale, exhale. You hear the faint rhythm in your mind. Knock, knock, knock. Then the pause stretches wide. At first it feels empty, but the longer you linger in it, the more you realize it is not empty at all. It is spacious. It is holding you. The silence itself is the cradle. And so, after centuries of speculation and wonder, humanity learned to let the signal simply be. No longer a riddle to be solved, but a presence to be lived with. Like a constellation in the sky, it did not need explanation to matter. Its meaning came from the stories we wove around it, the ways we carried it in our breathing, our art, our rituals of sleep. Some civilizations built temples of listening, where no words were spoken, only silence shared. Some families kept the tradition of tapping 3 times before bedtime, a gesture of belonging across time. In countless individuals, lying beneath alien skies or drifting through the hum of skeptics closed their eyes and imagined the rhythm. Each one became a link in an unbroken chain of listeners, stretching from the moment of discovery to whatever futures awaited. The mystery remained unsolved, and that was the point. Life itself is a series of mysteries we live within, not problems we always solve. The signal taught us this, gently, patiently, across centuries, to find beauty in what we do not understand, to rest in the unknown without fear. Now, as you settle deeper into stillness, you carry that same inheritance. You do not need to chase answers tonight. You do not need to solve the mysteries waiting outside your window. You need only to listen to your breath, to the quiet, to the vastness surrounding you like a soft blanket. Inhale, exhale, a pause. In that pause, the universe listens back. And so the story closes not with revelation, but with rest. The signal from 3IATLAS fades once more into silence, and silence itself becomes the message. It tells us, you belong. You are part of this rhythm. You are safe to drift now, carried by the same mystery that has guided dreamers for centuries. Knock, 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 a pause, then nothing. And in that, nothing, everything. The signal that humanity once captured from 3IATLAS was never a loud proclamation, never a booming declaration of presence. It was soft, almost imperceptible, like the whisper of a breeze against a window in the middle of the night. For a long time, people thought of it as a singular moment, something that would live in history as a solitary event. But as centuries stretched and generations turned over, the perspective changed. Humanity began to wonder whether that faint pulse was not alone, whether it was only one among countless other murmurs woven into the fabric of the universe. And so the idea of the cosmic echo was born. Imagine this: throughout the endless expanse of stars, signals ripple outward, radiating like concentric circles across the surface of a vast, invisible ocean. Some are deliberates from distant intelligences to be known. Others are accidents, fragments of radiation, the unintentional songs of machinery, the heartbeat of civilizations unaware they are speaking. And still others are natural, the language of pulsars, quasars, collapsing stars, and swirling magnetic fields. To listen is to hear not just one note, but a symphony, though a symphony so slow, so vast, that to our fragile ears it feels like silence. When humanity first started to imagine this broader chorus, it was overwhelming. The night sky, already immense, suddenly became alive with the possibility of voices. If 3I Atlas had sent something back to Earth, what if there were countless other signals passing through us each day, faint, distorted, unnoticed? The universe, in this view, was never quiet. It was like a great cathedral filled with echoes so ancient and so dispersed that no one could ever trace them to their origin. There is comfort in this thought, a kind of reassurance. Because if the cosmos is full of echoes, then humanity is never truly isolated. Every star, every planet, every drifting shard of rock becomes a participant in this ongoing dialogue of existence. The silence we once feared is not empty at all. It is full of faint reverberations that simply require patience to perceive. To close your eyes now, to breathe slowly in and out, is to imagine yourself as part of this echo chamber, your own heartbeat blending with the vibrations that span light years. Some ancient thinkers, long before telescopes, already intuited this. They spoke of the music of the spheres, a belief that planets and stars generated tones too subtle for human ears. A celestial harmony shaping the fabric of reality. Though modern science did not confirm literal planetary music, the metaphor lingers. For now, we know that stars do pulse, planets do resonate, black holes do hum. The universe does not sit in silence, it vibrates. And what we call a signal, such as the one from 3I Atlas, is simply one vibration that happened to brush against us. One thread in the grander weave. Imagine standing at the edge of an immense canyon, your voice echoing back to you after a delay. That is what the universe feels like, except The canyon is infinite, and the echoes are millions, billions of years in the making. Some signals return to no one at all. They fade into the dark. Others overlap, creating strange harmonies. Perhaps what humanity heard from 3IATLAS was not even the object itself, but an interference pattern, the meeting of signals from places unknown. The truth may never be resolved, but the mystery only deepens the beauty. And so the act of listening grew into something almost sacred. No longer was it merely about seeking answers or proof of alien life. Instead, it became an act of participation, a recognition that by listening, we joined the echo. To place an ear to the cosmos is to acknowledge that we are part of something vast, something layered with meaning we cannot yet translate. Just as one does not need to understand every note of a lullaby to be soothed by it, we do not need to decode every signal to feel the comfort of their presence. Over time, poets and philosophers began to describe 3IATLAS, not as an intruder, but as a reminder, a catalyst for a shift in awareness. It was as if the object had brushed past Earth not to deliver a single, urgent message, but to awaken us to the chorus we had always been immersed in. Its signal was a nudge, a soft clearing of the throat in a vast symphony hall, guiding us to finally listen. And once humanity started listening, the echoes revealed themselves everywhere in the static of deep space, in the slow oscillations of galaxies, in the gentle patterns of cosmic background radiation, the afterglow of creation itself. Think of yourself now, lying in stillness, the room dark around you. Each breath you take is an echo of something older, the rhythm of lungs tied to the rhythm of tides, and the tides tied to the pull of the moon. The moon, in turn, is bound to Earth's orbit, Earth bound to the sun to the Milky Way. It is all echoes, each motion a response to another, each heartbeat part of a greater resonance. The signal from 3IATLAS was not alien to this. It was simply another ripple in the same ocean, and like ripples on water, these signals do not vanish when they spread. They travel outward forever, carrying with them fragments of their source. Somewhere, perhaps millions of light-years away, the signal from 3I Atlas is still moving, still traveling, still brushing against other shores we cannot see. And if that is true for 3IATLAS, then it is true for us as well. Every transmission we've ever sent, every radio wave, every beacon, every whispered message of our existence, it all continues, endlessly, an echo of humanity stitched into the night. This is the cosmic echo, a reminder that nothing is lost, not entirely. Even the faintest signal, even the gentlest breath, leaves its imprint on the infinite. And as you settle deeper now, as your body grows heavier and your mind drifts softer, you too are part of this chorus. The rhythm of your breathing, the quiet pulse of your heart, these are echoes, signals moving through time, resonances that link you to the stars. So let the thought rest in you gently. 3IATLAS was not a single anomaly, not an isolated event, but a doorway into the awareness that the universe itself hums with messages. Some are clear, others mysterious, but all of them, together, weave a song that has been playing since before we were born and will continue long after we are gone. And in that song, you are not just an observer, you are a note, you are an echo, you are part of the cosmic symphony. When humanity first heard the whisper from 3IATLAS, we thought of ourselves as the listeners, the audience in a cosmic theater where other actors might one day appear. But as time passed, a realization dawned. We were not only listening, we were speaking. Our presence, our lives, our technologies, and even our dreams were signals radiating outward into the universe, whether we intended them or not. Long before we pointed great antennas at the stars, Earth itself was already transmitting. The crackle of lightning storms, the patterns of auroras, the faint hum of our magnetic field, these were natural signatures, fingerprints of a living world. Then came the inventions of our species, radio waves carrying voices, television beams, painting, flickering stories, spacecraft broadcasting beacons to guide themselves through the dark. Without ever meaning to, humanity announced itself to the galaxy. The Earth became a luminous sphere of transmissions, glowing in the invisible spectrum, pulsing with billions of messages. To imagine this is to picture Earth not only as a planet but as a lighthouse. Each rotation sweeps its beam across the night, casting signals into the dark sea of space. Some of those beams fade quickly, absorbed by the noise of the cosmos. Others may travel for thousands of years, crossing the gulfs between stars. And though the chance of them ever being received, decoded, or understood is uncertain, the fact remains, we have spoken, and we continue to speak. For centuries, we imagined ourselves as silent, waiting, hoping for others to call. But the truth is that we have been calling all along. Every burst of laughter recorded on a radio program, every symphony broadcast live, every simple weather report transmitted across the airwaves, they are all part of our signal. We are, in essence, woven into the fabric of the cosmos, announcing, we are here, we are alive, we are dreaming. Some philosophers began to call this the human pulse, not because it was deliberate, but because it reflected who we are. Our pulse is messy, chaotic, full of beauty and contradiction. A song layered with static, carrying fragments of countless stories. To any distant listener, humanity might sound like a cacophony. But within that chaos is life, unmistakable and unique. And just as we once strained to hear the faint rhythm from 3i Atlas, perhaps someone, somewhere, strains to hear ours. There is something humbling in this reversal. We once thought of ourselves as alone, gazing outward, waiting for the universe to notice us. Now we understand. We have already been noticed. Our signal has already begun its journey. Even if no one ever receives it, the waves exist. They are part of the great cosmic ocean, blending with the hum of quasars and the deep radio silence of interstellar space. We are listeners, yes, but we are also transmitters. Imagine for a moment a child standing at the edge of a vast canyon. They shout into the void, not expecting an answer, but simply to hear the echo of their own voice returning. That echo reassures them. I am here. I exist. The world has heard me. Humanity's signals are much the same. Whether they return or not, they carry the comfort of expression. They remind us that to speak is to be part of the universe's conversation. As technology evolved, people began to send signals with intention. Messages etched into gold plates aboard Voyager, radio beams directed toward nearby stars, patterns of mathematics encoded in transmissions. These were humanity's way of saying, we know we are not alone, and if you are listening, we want you to know us. But even these careful efforts were only a small part of the larger story. For the universe does not wait for us to craft perfection. It receives us as we are, with all our noise and all our beauty. Think of yourself now, lying in quiet, your breathing steady, your heart gentle. That rhythm too is a signal, though small. To those near you, it communicates presence, life, comfort. In your dreams, your mind sends signals within itself, whispering stories you may not recall in the morning. In this sense, each human is both a transmitter and a receiver, a self-contained echo chamber of being. Scaled outward, the species functions the same way. We dream, we send, we receive. Our collective existence is a chorus broadcast into eternity. Some futurists imagine a time when humanity will no longer send signals by accident, but by design, turning the act of transmission into art. Instead of static and fragmented broadcasts, we might weave entire symphonies meant to last millennia. Light patterns etched into the void, great beams carrying lullabies and poetry across the stars. We may not do this to be heard, but to participate, to give back to the chorus that has always surrounded us, and perhaps that is what 3i Atlas taught us. Its signal was not a conversation, not a clear set of instructions or a revelation. It was something softer, an invitation, a reminder that to exist in the universe is to resonate, to vibrate, to be part of something greater than silence. The object brushed past us and sent us a signal, but perhaps its deeper gift was awakening us to the fact that we, too, are signals, already in motion. As the centuries unfolded, humanity began to view itself less as an isolated observer and more as a participant in the symphony of echoes. We stopped asking only, who is out there, and began asking, what are we contributing to the song? The answer was never perfect, but it did not need to be. Perfection was never the point. The point was to sing, to transmit, to leave our note within the great unfolding harmony. And so, as you lie here now, your mind drifting gently, remember, you are not silent. Even in stillness, you are a signal. Your breath is a rhythm, your heartbeat a pulse, your presence an echo that touches the lives around you. Humanity is the same, scaled to the stars. Whether or not anyone hears us, whether or not the echoes return, the act of being is enough. The act of sending is enough. We are not only listeners in this universe, we are transmitters of dreams, and dreams, perhaps, are the most enduring signals of all. Night has always been our oldest companion. Long before telescopes, before science, before language itself, our ancestors looked into the darkness and wondered. The stars were silent, and yet they spoke. They stirred questions, they offered guidance, they carried dreams. The signal from 3i Atlas was a continuation of this ancient conversation, a modern echo of the same awe humanity has always felt beneath the night sky. And as we reach the end of this journey, the question is no longer what the signal meant, but what the silence itself holds. Silence is not empty. It is the canvas upon which every echo is painted. It is the space that makes music possible, the pause that gives words their meaning. The universe's silence is vast, stretching across unimaginable distances, but it is not absence. It is presence, the presence of possibility, the presence of unspoken connection. To listen to silence is to listen to eternity. And tonight, in this moment of rest, you are part of that eternity. The eternal night is not something to fear. It is not a void that erases us, but a gentle embrace that carries us. When you look into the sky, you may see darkness, but that darkness is filled with stars beyond counting, with galaxies beyond imagining, with whispers older than time itself. The night is alive with echoes, and you are safe within its rhythm. Just as Earth orbits the sun, and the sun orbits the galaxy, you orbit within this symphony of silence and sound. Think of the way 3IATLAs passed through our system. It did not linger forever. It came, it moved, and it left. And yet, its presence changed us. Its faint signal taught us to listen more deeply, to feel more gently, to remember that we, too, are part of the song. In that way, 3IATLAS is still here not as a rock of ice and dust, but as an echo, an idea, a memory woven into humanity's collective nights. And like all echoes, it will never truly vanish. So, too, with your own presence, you may drift into sleep now, and in sleep you may forget the details of this story, but the rhythm will remain. Your dreams will carry fragments of it. Your breath will echo its patterns. The night itself will remember you, just as it remembers every heartbeat, every whisper, every signal that has ever joined its chorus. There is a kind of beauty in not having all the answers. If the signal from 3IATLAS remains forever mysterious, it does not diminish its value. In fact, it makes it greater. Mystery is not a wall, it is a window. Through it, we glimpse not just what is out there, but what is within us, the capacity to wonder, to hope, to dream. The eternal night is the keeper of that mystery, holding it softly, like a lullaby that never ends. Close your eyes now, and imagine the universe not as a cold expanse but as a vast sea. On this sea, countless signals drift like small boats, each carrying a light. 3-1 Atlas was one of those lights, crossing our horizon for a brief moment before continuing on its way. Humanity is another, glowing softly, sending its presence into the dark. Perhaps other lights move as well, unseen by us, but still there, still part of the same ocean. Together they form a constellation of echoes, a quiet conversation that spans eternity. And you, too, are a light on this sea. Even in stillness, even in sleep, you shine. The rhythm of your breath joins the rhythm of the tides, the rhythm of the stars, the rhythm of galaxies turning endlessly in the deep. You are not separate from the eternal night, you are woven into it, a thread in its infinite tapestry. Let the thought comfort you. The universe is listening. Not in the way a person listens, not waiting with answers or judgments, but with a quiet, endless openness. Whatever you send your dreams, your questions, your unspoken hopes, it receives them. They do not vanish. They travel outward, rippling through time, becoming part of the cosmic echo. You are never unheard. You are never alone. The eternal night is vast, but it is gentle. It has carried civilizations before us, and it will carry civilizations after. It has held stars as they were born, and it has held them as they faded. It holds you now, wrapping around you like a soft blanket, surrounding you with quiet, patient silence. It asks for nothing, and it gives everything. In its presence, you can rest. As you drift, now, let the rhythm of your breathing match the rhythm of the universe. Slow, steady, endless. Inhale with the rising of distant stars. Exhale with the turning of galaxies. Let the weight of your body sink deeper, knowing the night is holding you, just as it holds every echo, every signal, every mystery. The signal of 3I Atlas has faded, but the mystery remains, and in that mystery lies peace. Because not all stories require endings, and not all questions require answers. Sometimes it is enough to know that you are part of the song, that you are both signal and silence, both listener and transmitter. Sometimes it is enough simply to rest within the eternal night. So now, let yourself rest. Let your thoughts dissolve into the quiet. Let the eternal night guide you into dreams, where signals become stories, and stories become echoes, and echoes become sleep. You are safe, you are heard, you are part of the universe's endless song, and the night, eternal and infinite, will carry you gently until morning. Now that our journey has come to an end, allow yourself to rest. You've traveled across stars, through echoes of time, and into the silence of the eternal night. There is nothing more you need to do, nothing to solve, nothing to carry. Feel the weight of your body sinking gently into the surface beneath you. With each breath, release a little more tension. Inhale softly, and exhale fully. Again, inhale and let go. The universe is vast, and yet it holds you with care, the way it holds the stars and the drifting signals that travel endlessly. You are safe within that embrace. Let your thoughts grow lighter now, like dust drifting through starlight. Let your breath become your rhythm, steady and calm. Every inhale is a reminder that you belong here. Every exhale is a release, a gentle surrender to peace. The story of 3I Atlas may fade from your conscious mind, but the feeling remains a sense of wonder, of connection, of being part of something infinite. Let that feeling cradle you as sleep begins to wash over. Rest now, traveler. Drift into dreams. The night will carry you, and when the morning comes, you'll awaken renewed, with the quiet memory of stars watching over you. Until then, sleep deeply, sleep peacefully, and let the eternal night keep you safe.